Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother asarimhotep with the Madhu Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture, as well as the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. Today is Sunday, December the 26th, 2021, and today is an open discussion. So we'll share the link a little later if you want to come on and tell me what's on your mind, what kind of questions that you may have, um, or what kind of issues you want to address dealing with scholarship, African spirituality, current events, whatever's on your mind within reason. And every 2 to 3 months I like to have these so I can, keep my ear to the streets and dialogue with the community. So I do appreciate everyone who was joining us live. And with that said, we'll be back in just one moment. Yes. And we are back. And my thumbnail doesn't want to go anywhere for whatever reasons. And there we go. And excuse my hair, I just don't feel like doing it right now. So y'all just going to get the SAR at home weekend special. Anyway, thank you again for joining us this Sunday, December the 26th, 2021 for this open discussion, open forum. And as always, just have a few announcements and, we can get this mug started. So first and foremost, just want to remind everyone that we will be heading to Egypt, Kemet as we call it, Ta Mary, Idibwe, one of many names for the ancient Egyptian state. And our good brother Taki, producer of the film Hoppy, and the whole Hoppy crew will be heading to Egypt in February, for which I also will be in attendance. And I believe the 25th and 26th, there will be a 2-day conference, which will include Professor James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Anthony T. Browder, Dr. Solange Ashby, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Wade Nobles, and his wife, Dr. Vera Nobles, Mfudishi Jehuti Mess, myself, and Dr. Teofalo Binga. There's somebody else I know I'm missing. Wish they had the flyer with everyone on it. But these will be the keynote speakers for this 2-day event. And from what I understand, there's going to be a lot of people attending. So, if you just got, a couple thousand to spare in these last 2 months and you think you want to make it, go to akettours.com and to find out more information about how you can attend. And that's the link right there. And in other news along the same lines, in Houston, Texas, on January the 8th and 9th, the same Hoppy movement is going around the country and showing the documentary film Hoppy And just to mention that I was also in that film as well. And two other speakers who were in the film, Dr. Wade Nobles and Professor James Small, will also be coming to Houston and will be speaking at the Shrine of the Black Madonna on January the 8th. That is Saturday, January the 8th at 1 p.m. And on Sunday, January the 9th, starting at 5:30 p.m., we will be showing the Hoppy film. And after the film, there will be an additional panel discussion, which will include Dr. Wade Nobles, Professor James Small, uh, as well as Dr. Vera Nobles, Dr. Wade Nobles' wife, and myself, and of course, Brother Taki Grant and Sister Felicia, the producers of the Hoppy film. So if you are in the Houston area, that includes Mo City, that includes Galveston, that includes Port Arthur, that includes the north side, and north side of Houston is its own country. So the north side of Houston, south side, west side, if you live off of Airport and Fondren, make your way over to the Tray off of MLK Street and attend both days. So to learn more about the weekend, make sure that you hit up the hoppyfilm.com website, and you can purchase your tickets there. You can attend both days or you can just attend one of the days, but go to hoppyfilm.com so that you can purchase your ticket. And it's going to be a very, very powerful weekend. And so the I forgot to mention the title of the thing is the restoration of African sacred sciences and cultural consciousness. That part is be taken care of by Dr. Wade Nobles, and the restoration of African sacred sciences will be discussed by our good professor James Small. And so again, on the second day will be the film showing as well as the panel discussion. And so the panelists is Dr. Wade Nobles, myself, Brother asarimhotep, Professor James Small, Brother Taki Grant, and Dr. Vera Nobles. So again, it's going to be a jam-packed weekend. And, the Shrine of the Black Madonna is my home. I love it there. I used to host events there while I was in college and even after college. When I attended the University of Houston. And so, it is going home for me. And believe me, if you haven't been, you will definitely enjoy yourself. So make sure that it's January the 8th and January the 9th, 2022 in Houston, Texas. So even if you aren't in Houston, if you drive, you live in Austin, drive from Austin to Houston, drive from Dallas to Houston. You in San Antonio, Texas, drive to Houston and make it out for this event. I promise you, you will not regret it. And speaking of the Hoppy film experience, as I mentioned earlier, we will be going to Egypt in 2022 in February, and we will also be we will also be filming for the documentary Chiana Into. And matter of fact, I do have I'll just share the screen over here as soon as I can find it. And y'all can check out my commercial while I wait for a few more of you to join in. And then we'll be just taking your questions and your comments and insights on what's in the world today. So, with that said,
you see, I have a lot of things that's on my mind, and I would like to let them out. Look, I see reality breaking down all my fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabyte from the American apple pie, better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave, what's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. A lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart? I don't do the things that I used to. I'll be fine even if I lose you, okay? Yeah. Okay.
Peace and blessings, family. My name is asarimhotep, and I am with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology, as well as the popular YouTube channel Mbongi. I am an Africologist and computer scientist out of Houston, Texas, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I have spent the last 20 years researching the connections between ancient Kemet, that is modern Egypt, and modern Bantu-speaking cultures of Central and Southern Africa. Throughout this 20-year journey, I've examined all the relevant literature in numerous languages, collected paleontological as well as archaeological data from across millennia. I have presented hypotheses and abandoned hypotheses, come to conclusions and abandoned conclusions, reviewed arguments for and against known hypotheses, and analyzed frameworks that sought to define and characterize the vast array of African experiences. After over 20 years of asking critical questions of history, of philosophy, religion, and culture, I have finally gotten to the point where I have complete and total faith in the results of our research. I say our research because I am one of among a number of scholars who have either laid the foundations in classical Africology or are continuing to expand and develop more robust research on this connection between ancient Egyptian and Bantu civilizations. After spending so much time behind the computer and in the libraries and in the museums for over 20 years, I believe it is time to go out and to touch the living artifacts and engage with the people involved in the research whose stories we have been telling all this time, which brings us to why we are here today. Although I have written and will continue to write about the results of my research, my goal now is to summarize this data and present it in documentary film form. I have decided to put some of that computer science as well as new media experience together to creatively tell this important aspect of African history that many may not be aware of. The title of the film is China Into, Ancient Kemet and the Into Universe, and we are currently raising funds for the first phase of our journey. In February of 2022, I will be joining the crew of the award-winning documentary film Hapi, The Role of Economics on the Development of Civilization, for a very important Returning to the Source tour and conference in Egypt, which we know is in Northeast Africa. And while I am there, I will be shooting parts of our film China Into and gathering footage for a proof of concept trailer, which will be used for greater fundraising efforts in the near future. And this is where you come in. I am currently trying to raise $5,000 to help with location expenses, equipment rentals, insurance, and the like, so that we can get some great shots for some primary as well as B-roll footage. When we return from Egypt, some of this footage will be combined with some preliminary interviews to compile a unique trailer to give the audience and potential investors a glimpse of the vision and potential of the film. Our ultimate goal is to travel to places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zimbabwe, Uganda, and South Africa for the first film. And did I forget to mention that we intend for this to be a series of documentary films? Therefore, subsequent films will require us to travel to places like Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal, as well as Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. We have big goals, and with your help, we can make this happen. And if you're Interested in donating to this film project, please visit our website at www.chianaintofilm.com, where you can leave a donation. There are other ways you can donate as well, which includes joining our Patreon page, donating through CashApp, or donating live when we're doing a live show on YouTube. And the YouTube channel has over 6,000 subscribers, and Facebook has over 5,000 subscribers as well. And with a minimum donation of like $5 each, we can quickly reach our goal. You can spread the word of our efforts by sharing this video with friends and colleagues, as well as liking it. We appreciate your help, and all donors will be given credit on the website, as well as at the end of the film during the credits. We thank you from the bottom of our heart to those who have given generously already, and we look forward to bringing this important film to the public. Hotep. Yes. So I hope you liked my commercial for the documentary film, and I'll be working on some more in the near future. But so yes, you can go to, if you would like to contribute to the film, you can go to chianaintofilm.com, and any and all donations are welcome, and we're going to do the thing. And so, part of what we could probably talk about tonight is the importance of Black media and in taking control of our image and controlling our narrative. And so, this is a step in that direction, so that we can put the information, the proper information, within the right context of our historical greatness, our weaknesses, just history in general, our cultures, and psychology. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this is an open forum. And so, before I go, I just want to acknowledge everyone who has made themselves known in the chat. And so, peace to Teti Ursa Ma'at Ra Seneferu. Peace and Black power to you. Infinite Minds is in the building. Marlon is in the building. Boom is making noise as usual. Seku Kela is in the building, and I see him trying to come in, as well as Sister Mika in the building. Let me get rid of this banner real quick. I don't think it's up there. Never mind. And it is still up there. There we go. Peace to Sister Tamika. Thank you very much. Enigma 9x9 is in the building. Donnie Williams is in the place to be. Thank you, Sister Ladosha. Greetings, peace, and blessings to you, sister. And Kimoyo, West African Spirit, is in the building. That good guy has made himself known. Peace and blessings to you, Robert Rand, always holding it down. Thank you for joining us, good brother. Uwa Abantu number 2, not number 1 or number 3, but number 2 is in the building. Sadat is in the building. Yes, is definitely a lineup of legends in that trip. And so I'm telling you, y'all don't want to miss it. It's ironic because one of the first times that I met Professor James Smalls, he was speaking on a similar topic, but it was on African secret societies. That was the topic that he was speaking on some 20 some odd years ago in Houston when I was at the University of Houston. So here we go. Womp Womp is in the building. Thank you for joining. Peace and blessings to Brother Conan Lee. Thank you for joining us. I know it's probably late where you're at, all the way across the waters, and EJG, aka Shango. Uh, he asked the question, Asar, what are your thoughts on Kwanzaa? Is Kwanzaa appropriate for African Americans? I'll get into that question in just a little bit. And Villanous Ninja is in the building. Peace and blessings to you as well, and everyone who is joining from excuse me, from Facebook, whose chat may not show up here. Peace to Shawala Ingalulu Kalingaye, all the way out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. I think he's still in Israel at this moment. So if you're joining us all the way from Israel, peace and blessings to you, good brother. And let me see here. And I see that our brother is trying to get on. And just to remind you that, again, this is an open forum question and answer. And you can either ask a question in the chat or, make a comment in the chat, or you can actually come live, on the program. So the link has been shared in the chat, and I believe that I pinned it in the on the YouTube chat. So on the asarimhotep page, you should see the link pop up in the chat there. But, if you want to join the conversation, you will have to click on the link that is pinned at the top of the chat. And so that's where it is. And I don't know if the person who was trying to come in, Brother Seku, if you're still listening or if you're, having any problems. So, as soon as you come on, so I'll first start off and say Habaragani to each and every one of you. And, the first day of Kwanzaa is Umoja, which is a word for unity. And, there's many cognates. It's actually, a word for unity, oneness, harmony, and actually corresponds, I believe, with the word ma'at in ancient Egypt. I did some linguistic analysis on it some years ago. And so, that is a very important principle to start off with. And since we are talking about Kwanzaa, EJG, aka Shango, asked a question. Asar, what are your thoughts on Kwanzaa? Is Kwanzaa appropriate for African Americans? I'll answer the second question first. I believe that it is appropriate for African Americans because it was originally created for African Americans by African Americans. And so, this the holiday itself, I know some people have their reservations for some reasons. Some people believe that it's not an African holiday, and others believe or have issues with Dr. Malana Karanga himself. And this is a Pan-African holiday that has spread all around the world. And Kwanzaa corresponds to Hanukkah. Gable Cyrus says that no, it does not. I recommend that you do your research. The reason why Kwanzaa is on the date that it is because it corresponds with a Southern or Southeast African first fruits holiday. And this is their harvest time. And this is where he got the timing from. And he just kind of put it a little bit past the Christmas holiday as not necessarily to compete with it, given everyone's association with the Christmas holiday as well as Hanukkah and the like. And so, no, it's not Hanukkah. It doesn't correspond to it, anything to that nature. Even if there's some elements in terms of, for example, lighting candles, that's neither here nor there. Um, and thank you to Villainous Ninja for the generous contribution. It is greatly appreciated. And thank you again for joining this community discussion and forum. And if you have any questions or anything to say, please feel free to either join the panel or ask your question in the chat. And so my brother Seku is back. I don't know if you're having connection problems.
Yes. Oh,
What you
sorry.
say?
Yeah, I'm having issue with technology.
I see. No problem.
Yeah.
Dang, I got some juice in my eye.
Okay.
First and foremost, thank you for coming on and
Thank you.
for joining us once again. I appreciate your presence. Um, and so, yeah, what's on your mind?
Yes, thank you very much, Abarigani, for the
Yes,
for the
Umoja.
Kwanzaa. I heard some people asking you questions. Yeah, for me, this is my first time celebrating Kwanzaa for the first time. So I think it's very interesting. I see, as a West African, I see a lot of elements that connects to our culture. Everybody, if you are from Africa, as soon as you see Kwanzaa, even without anybody telling you, you see the Kwanzaa table, something wrong in your mind, tell you that I'm familiar with it, but I don't know what it is. Because we
Yeah.
do that. The Igbo have the Yam Festival. We also have, everybody have different festival on the African continent, but it's always connected to agriculture because we plant and then we harvest. So there's celebration for that harvest. So what you guys call Thanksgiving in America, I know it has a different history, but for us, it's always about harvest, connected. So African people understand. So Dr. Kalanga understood African culture. So he brought that together. For me, it's interesting because it's a Pan-African flavor to it that bring all of us together. Now there's a holiday I can celebrate with African American, with those in Caribbeans, with those all over Black people can finally come together without any religion dividing us. So that's why I think it's very, very important, for us to spread the news of Kwanzaa. And I got a lot of people celebrating it this year. I include a lot of people. I bought my candles and all that. And I think it's any African, like I got some Rwandese friends from Rwanda. When I told them about it, they were like, "Oh yeah, it sounds familiar. We do this too, but we don't call it Kwanzaa, but we do it." So they join the celebration. You see?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what is on my mind tonight? I see the work most of our scholars are doing. Some of you come following the footsteps of our great scholars like Diop, like John Henry Clark, and what they have done. But I'm always worried about what the Kemetic, the community, African Renaissance community, what they've done so far. 50 years is gone since Diop published his first book. There is no institution yet that controls what we are doing on the field of Egyptology or on the African Renaissance culture. For example, the European culture, you can't just say anything or write anything about European culture. There are scholars who can validate and say, yeah, this is correct. This is part of our European culture, or they can reject it. So we don't have an authority in the African school of Egyptology to say this is what we validate and this is what we reject. So in order for us, everybody just bringing in ideas and we are floating out there, and we are not really having an institution that controls the information. One example I will give is on the issue of pronouncing Meduneta words. We see the vowels that have been added by Europeans. It makes us think we are speaking, is as if we are speaking a Semitic language, Ma'at and all these things. When I look at the spelling, it's not even Ma'at. Okay? I started to learn how to read hieroglyphics. When I look at it, I don't see Ma'at there. But then we decided to pronounce as Ma'at. Another thing I discovered, the way the words are arranged. The Egyptology changed the arrangement. They think the Egyptians don't know what they were doing when they arrange certain noun, the adjectives come before the noun and all those things. They rearrange it to suit the English language. But the people who wrote the hieroglyphic, there's a reason they arranged it that way. For example, I will give a quick example. Like I was reading, I saw the word Nesut come first. Then after Nesut, you have Nesut is king. Then D to give. A hotep, he gave an offering. So they arranged it in that order, but the Egyptologists said no, it's badly arranged. So they arranged it properly in English for us to understand. So for I think our scholar need to say, no, this arrangement is correct because that's how African people speak. This is the way they arrange their own words. So these are things that our scholars are overlooking, and we are just reading directly from Egyptologists. We are picking up what they are doing, and we think it's wrong, but we are still repeating it. We are still repeating the translation they are giving us. So I don't know where we are going with this in another 50 years, repeating the same thing the European Egyptologists are doing, and we don't have authority to tell us this is how we are now going to pronounce these words. This is how we are now going to be viewing Kemet. This is how you should now be seeing this information. So for me, it's like we are still going in cycle with the European information.
Indeed. And I appreciate that commentary because I've had the same idea, or I've had the same thoughts, I should say, regarding that. And I will say first and foremost that at least on the continent, there's two spaces for African Egyptology. Of course, the Dakar School in Senegal, and so like they have an actual Egyptology department, and so Abu Bukri Musalam and others head that over there, and they're granting degrees, and there's people right now who's writing dissertations on various different subjects. Of course, however, it's primarily in French. So a lot of us, who don't speak French are not privy or aware of the kind of scholarship that is going on there. And secondly, the other place, and I don't know how far they've gotten as far as the institution, but there's a researcher, Omindiji, Pierre Omindiji, who is an Egyptologist, and relatively recently, like within the last 5 years or so, there was another individual out of Cameroon who got his degree in Egyptology, and Omindiji was one of his supervisors for his thesis. And I forgot what the title of it was. But I remember it has to do with the Meta Neter script originating from divination. Like that was the focus of his dissertation. And so, but they were supposed to be building or developing an Egyptology center in Cameroon, at the University of Yaoundé. And but of course that takes funds, and there's a lot of stuff that has to happen, and just given the landscape of certain things out there. So I know at least in those two spaces that on the continent of Africa, of course, one is already established, that's the Senegal school, and the other one is in the works. Now here in the United States, of course, we don't have an African-centered Egyptology, but that's something that I'm trying to remedy. And this is why I created the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And the goal is to have a brick and mortar center, as well as to get on the university campus and develop a curriculum and grant degrees, and to have an online journal. That's part of the idea. Then, of course, our own publication. So the first publication in that is this publication, my publication, Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba Orisha, and Ancient Egyptian Ak, an exploratory etymological study. And as you can see, the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And it's going to have a slightly, was not even slightly, it's going to be a drastically different orientation. So when you go to any Egyptology department in Europe or in America, or even in Egypt itself, it is always attached to the Near East. So it's like ancient Egyptian studies is part of Near Eastern studies, right? And so what I've essentially conceptualized is when we study ancient Egypt, is part of Nile River studies. And so we're studying all the history, cultures, and languages primarily all the way the 4,100 miles of the Nile. So going into the Congo, and then when it splits, it going to Ethiopia, in the Great Lakes region, all the way through Uganda, Kenya, Sudan, in Egypt. And so it will encompass, those areas. And so the orientations and things will be there. And so we don't take, even though they had interactions, of course, you're going to have to deal with, of course, Greece. You're going to have to deal with the Levant because the history is there. But we're not, a priori looking that way towards, the origins and for, to answer critical questions of culture and things. For now, I don't know if you've caught, and I'm gonna add Falade into the conversation. And peace and blessings to you. I'll get you in just a little bit, but excuse me. I don't know if you've caught the last program that I did on Friday. I think it was Friday. Yeah, Friday. On, I think I titled it Ancient Egyptian Civilization as part of Bantu, or Ancient Egypt as part of Bantu civilization, right?
Yeah.
And so I played this video. So I'm gonna play it here. I'm gonna black out the screen, and I'm gonna play this. This is from TikTok video, but you can see the reinforcement of this notion that we should be looking towards the quote unquote Near East for explaining the origins and development of ancient Egypt. So this is going around TikTok right now as we speak.
The Egyptian race. The Egyptians are not black, they are not white, they are not aliens, they are indigenous to their homelands and come in all shades and colors. A recent paper published in 2021 gives us the clearest insight into the genetic history of the Egyptians, which I have modeled here for you visually to view. At its roots, the Egyptian genome is comprised of an indigenous North African core dating back more than 30,000 years. Around 10,000 years ago, we see the input of Natufian-related ancestry, which came from the first people who discovered farming in the Levant. Around 5,000 years ago, there was additional admixture from the Middle East, except this time characterized by the introduction of Mesopotamian groups who brought a component of their DNA into the region. Upon the unification of both Upper and Lower Egypt, a component known as Mota was introduced, today found high within Cushitic and Omotic groups of Africa. And finally, during the late Bronze Age to late Antiquity, various small influxes of people from the Mediterranean, Maghreb, and West Asia settled in the Nile Delta. The Egyptians, including both Christian Copts and Arabic-speaking Muslims, are the true descendants of the ancient Egyptians who once ruled the fertile plains of the Nile River Valley. The appropriation of Egyptian culture by both political, cultural, and ideological movements atrophies the identity of 104 million people who have ties to the greatest civilization to have ever sprung up in the history of man. Rather than fetishizing Egyptian culture as being alien and mysterious, let us be thankful and acknowledge the modern people of Mesr, whose history and cultural contributions live on through their people with each and every breath.
So I hope you were able to catch, everything that was said. So this is what we have to contend with.
Right. I've seen a lot of this stuff. The issue is, the more I see this, I'm a little bit happy. It's a kind of, you say, but why are you happy? I'm happy because if you see them talking like this, being on defensive, it's because the Africans have hit hard. Okay. 50 years ago, they don't even bother talking about this because it was normal. Okay. But now they are seeing that everywhere they hit, every website, every internet, the Afrocentric scholars have delved blow into this information, and the blow is so deep that they can't survive it. So what you see now is a reactionary type of thing. Oh, we've always been here. We always add a little African added and a little Levant. We know the position changed. How do we know? When you look at the 1974 symposium with Diop, they were defending the position that ancient Egyptians were white people. That was the position of Egyptology. They were Aryan race. After the debate, they changed. They said now it was multicultural. People came from all over, and people. How did you change the goalpost? Okay, what new information did you find to change that goalpost? It's just because it's African and it's black, and to admit that will mean a lot of things to them. So they have to now say it's mixed. So many Africans already embrace this idea of universalism, universal culture, global, universal, we are all one people, we live in a global village. So this fake idea that has been sold by West, so now they want to use that to say Egypt was just a multicultural. We all came from all over, so race doesn't matter. So that the black man contribution can disappear in that whole confusion. So we get it. But this is why our scholars now, for us in the 21st century, it's not to reproduce what Diop and others have done and go back with symposium with them. We have to own the information now. We have to now be living the culture and producing the future. Enough with this debate. Let's produce something that they see the actual ancient Egyptian civilization being reproduced by us. Then the game is over.
Exactly. I mean, and that's exactly the point. It's this is why we have to take steps like this, because like one of the focuses, the inspirations I had is that I noticed that, of course, there's always a school of thought. So regardless, once you get into academia and you really start studying and engaging and going to conferences, you'll come to understand that it's their scholarship, but the scholarship always falls within a particular school of thought. It doesn't matter if it's Egyptology, African history, science, quantum mechanics. There's a school of thought that certain people belong to, and they gear their scholarship towards that particular framework. And when it came to, African Americans, and I'm speaking about African Americans more specifically, but just the scholarship that was being done over here in the United States regarding Egypt, there was no school of thought. Like there was no framework. Like we can talk about the Diopian school and the Senegal school and what they're doing and the orientation there. But we have in the United States, we have the Oriental Institute, right? And then you got New York University in Brown, and we got the University of Pennsylvania. Then you got, of course, the Oxford and the what we call the London school, and how they do things there. Then, of course, there's the Francophone school. Then, of course, you got the Berlin, the German school. Like each one of them has their own unique culture and ways to approaching this study of Egyptology. But when it comes to us over here, we're too much relying, and I'm not saying like, and that's not even really a good way to say it, but I'm trying to think of a better way. But we're relying too much, just as you said, on what Diop wrote, decades ago, and there's very few of us who are actually trying to push the boundaries and discover, something new in this space, and like moving the discipline. So what I'm kind of focused on is an actual discipline of, as part of Africology. And so, that's kind of, that's the goal. So I'm at the very beginning stages. I've already been meeting with a number of scholars, getting their feedback. Then, they're telling me, this is kind of how you should, kind of approach it. Here are some pitfalls you may want to, da, da, da. Even when it comes to accreditation. I was, interviewing some scholars, and not public interviews, it's just private interviews, interviewing some scholars who just aren't even in this space, but who have backgrounds in, developing and refereeing journals, for example, or creating, the curriculum and the accreditation spaces, for example. So when we come, we come hard, and the regardless to what everyone else's opinions are or their positions, they're going to have to respect the rigor in which, we're coming with the information. And so we're forcing them to do such things as what we saw in the video. And this is why it's important, even just on the media space, why we have to have our own films in things like this, so that we can show. Because it's one thing, like, I can write all the books in the world. The vast majority of the people are on spaces like this, and like to see things visually. And so, so part of why I'm doing the film is to bring them to the books, to introduce them to these authors like Bilolo, like Abubakar Musalam, Dr. Kipkoech Sambu, for example, and others who have made major contributions to this space, and then even hopefully to inspire others to join in and to go through the rigors in the discipline or whatnot to join this fight. And hold on one second, I want to acknowledge the super chat. Thank you, Dr. Ortiz. She says, this is exciting work, can't wait to see the center become a reality. I appreciate it greatly. And this is Dr. Melba Velez Ortiz. She has been interviewed on this program before, and she has a book, and I should have it somewhere around here. Here we go. Ma'ati Ethics in a Communication Context. So hopefully y'all can see this text. Y'all make sure that y'all go out and get this. This is her right here, Dr. Melba Velez Ortiz. And she has been interviewed on this program before. And I have my copy of the text, and so should you. So thank you very, very much for the super chat. And peace and blessings to you. So I'm sorry. You want to respond?
Yeah, definitely. I think if someone is already in with us, we are three here now. Falade is here.
Mm.
I wanted to introduce another question that I have, but I don't know if he wanted to say something about what we are discussing.
All right,
No, you guys are good. Just go on, go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Brother Asar, my second question is on African spirituality.
okay.
A lot is going on. If you get on internet, everybody have interpretation about it. People are excited about this African spirituality. But I think there are a lot of things we are overlooking. One, African spirituality was still there when the Europeans took over the continent, the Arabs took over and they destroyed the continent. That means something was wrong. It's like the African spirituality, there must be something wrong with it in terms of how it was governing the system, that it was defeated so easily. I
Mhm.
would not say so easily, but at least it was defeated. So
Mhm.
in ancient Egypt, we saw how they use it, and they were able to use science together with African spirituality to build their civilization. But coming down to the empires, we see that yes, African spirituality was still visible, but it wasn't as strong as the one we saw in ancient Egypt, especially when there was no more writing going on. So a lot of
Mhm.
superstition was already creeping in, and there was deal called cultural regression. So now
Mhm.
when we see people now want to reproduce African spirituality, they go back to the voodoo in West Africa, and then they don't look at it to see was there any moment of time where there were cultural regression, where our ancestors actually went into cultural regression and they were practicing certain ritual that we know it cannot benefit us today. There is no way we can use it today to be able to face our enemy. I mean, look at Islam with all its power on the continent. Look at
Mhm.
how Christianity is in every cycle. Are we going to be lighting our little candles in our rooms and overtake these guys? Are we for real? And we are not really willing to come together and say, this African spirituality, how do we bring it into the future? We have to have a conference to define the concept of God. Let's define it properly, because everyone you ask will say, oh, God is the totality of the universe. The other one you ask, they have another definition. We have to have a definition of what is our concept of God today as people who wants to follow African spirituality, and what is our approach to these rituals, and how do we look at science as opposed to a religion, spiritual doctrine, because so we don't confuse metaphysics with science, with real scientific argument, so that people who are practicing spirituality do not go against scientific discovery, so that we don't go back because when your spirituality goes against science, your progress will be slow. That's what happened everywhere in the world. Once you start going against science and then you take belief, then you start to regress. You go backward. So how do we avoid that? And how do we know at what point did our culture regress backward, so that we don't go back and pick? Because I see people today leaving France, Europe, they go to meet some other guys in Mali. They say they are not getting initiated into African spirituality. Then they put all type of stuff on them. They go in the bush and then they do there. They kill chicken and they dance, they eat, and they say they are reproducing African spirituality. Why people are sending satellites to space? Okay, a lot of things happening around the world. The Muslims are coming from the north. They want to take over the continent. So we are going to go in the bush and be doing this secret stuff. What is the definition of African spirituality today? For me, I have embraced African spirituality, but I don't want anything that will bring us backward, because we have to be careful. There were cultural regression on the continent. There is no joke about that. We cannot say what was happening in Liberia, Sierra Leone when the European came is what was happening in Egypt. That's not true. We were cultural regression was going on. There was no more writings. Everything went into us almost superstition. And that was the state we were in. It's just like the enemy could not differentiate between our classical period and our period of cultural regression. They want to join everything together. But now we are trying to make the difference. But if we want to reproduce our culture, shouldn't we make a distinction between the cultural regression period and the classical period in order to produce the future? That's where I'm a little bit confused, because I don't see myself going to the bush putting on these calories on myself again and say, I'm calling my ancestor to help me. I want to have a different understanding now of how do I get Africa into the 21st century? How do we compete? How can we stand Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity? How do we stand these people and be better? It's not by going into the bush anymore. So that's where I'm a little bit confused. I don't know if you understand.
No, I understand. And this is a conversation that we have quite frequently in my circles. And, normally I start off with a point that Diop made. And I will add this to what he was discussing. And part of it has to deal with African pedagogy. The way that we taught was geared towards a village context, like a small village context. Now, there are pockets in Africa where certain people had a scientific mindset. However, because they didn't have writing, the way to transmit information, it took them years upon years of trying to memorize stuff without being able to go back in and experiment and expand on the knowledge. And I have a few citations that talk about this, and for example, I forgot his scholar's name. He's a European who was initiated into Central African wisdom tradition in the Luba. Matter of fact, it was in the Luba tradition. But he was like, I spent so much time just memorizing stuff that I didn't have time to reflect, really, until some years later. And within this context, Diop was talking about how a lot of important and useful information was held in the mind of elders, and they would only depart this information, one, to family members, and usually on their deathbed, if they had that time. And he was saying that this is an insufficient way to transmit scientific information. And so the very thing that kind of makes us unique in terms of the oral tradition and the griot, you can't do science that way, because you need to be able to write and document the steps and what went wrong and why certain things went wrong, yada yada yada. And in the oral tradition, you can't do that, and then you have to rely on memory. So that's one aspect of it. It's just African pedagogy. The second thing is, and this is something that I've been contemplating on for a number of years, because I always ask this question. I'm like, Africans, deep spirituality, but it was useless against European weaponry, Arab weaponry. And so for a time, of course, when you first as an African American who, of course, grew up Christian and then transitioned into an awareness of myself within an African context, my first introduction into African religion and spirituality had to deal primarily with ethics, with ritual, with dance, with symbols, stuff like this. Only after years and years and years of deep study and going through the languages and doing etymologies of these words and paying attention to the kind of focus and the way the society was set up, did I come to realize that we got spirituality wrong. And part of it is because we're trying to translate African ideas into English and French, and we got to use the words that they understand um in trying to translate these terms. So for example, I cite this all the time. uh so we have among the Ga people of West Africa, people related to the Ashantis, and kind of distant cousins of the Yoruba and Igbo folks. And there's a word in this text. I'm looking in my text, Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba Orisha, an ancient Egyptian. They have a word for divine or divinity called Won, right? And Won is defined. Hold on one sec. Because I want to read it verbatim so I don't miss anything. Where did I? Please forgive me. I'm getting old. I don't know if y'all can see the gray hairs growing with
I think it was
strength.
anything that does work and cannot be seen.
Yeah, but I wanna read it verbatim, and I want to give the source. And so I know it's in the appendix. I just don't remember what page it's on. But I cite it all the time. So so you know exactly where I'm going and what I mean. Or did I put that? Let me go a little further. I'll go a little further up because it's going to be very important, because it has a very scientific orientation to it. And because it's just a matter of being able to properly transition the ideas
Because
from
like
the traditional, and I
right.
found it. So it wasn't
Oh,
in the appendix. It was at the beginning of the book, page 24 of my text, but it's page 4 of M.J. Field's text, Religion and Medicine of the Ga People, 1937. So he says a wo, and this word wo in Yoruba is, iwon, or just won, for spirit and ancestors and yada yada. In the Egyptian language, it is iwin. Is also an epithet for Osiris. There's among the Ingas people of Nigeria, they say won, which is a word for ancestors, the living dead, shames. And then the Bachama, also of Nigeria, they say won, and it is the demigod in charge of the dead, the demigod in charge of the kingdom of death, just like Osiris that you find in ancient Kemet, who is given that same title. But so yeah, in Yoruba it's Iwin, ancestors, ghost spirits, and then there's a word Awon, a word for spirit. But I like this definition, and I think it applies to many other groups. So it says a won, by God definition, is anything that can work but not be seen, and includes the smaller beings of specialized and limited activity associated with medicines and magic. So I'm going to read it again. A won, a spirit, a nature, a golden play, have whatever word you want to replace it with. As a matter of fact, and I do the linguistic analysis, it's cognate with the word nature, and in Kole in Chiluba. is anything that can work but not be seen. That includes the smaller beings of specialized and limited activity associated with medicines and magic. And when you read that, this is a quintessential definition of what we call in physics energy. And so energy is the ability to do work, right? And work in physics is simply, an object or thing, moving from one reference frame to another by an external force, right? And so when you have the word here as given here, you're talking about an agent that can do work. Now this becomes very important because when you actually read these texts, you notice that human beings are also called in these different languages gods, right? Won, nature, Inkole, Bainkole, Toro, whatever. Because the quintessential idea is in terms of an agent that has the capacity to work or to make things happen. And so you have these forces or these entities in nature that make things to move and be the way they be. And when I was interviewing Dr. Alexis Tengong, who's of the Dagara people in northern Ghana, and in his text on medicine from dealing with the Dagara people, he talks about, of course, getting into what's the definition of God. For them, essentially is everything and all things at once. It's the universe itself. And what he was saying is that when you want to know about God, you study universe. And for whatever component in which you're studying, you put it in the form of deity so that you can personalize it and that it resonates with the learner. And so remember I'm talking about is African pedagogy. This is just the way we teach. What happens is a lot of people have taken a lot of these stories that were really meant for children personally as if this is how it is really in the universe, when that was just a stepping stone for more abstract teachings, which you only get later in your development in terms of a guided path or a priesthood, if they have a priesthood or something to this nature. But by the time you get this particular type of information again, you're a lot older. So what has to happen is that we have to demythologize these aspects of the teachings because they just refer to medicines like what we would call a deity would be an active ingredient in a particular type of medicine. When you talk about these adventures, you're talking about the relationship between forces in nature, and this is the stuff that scientists study. And
Well,
so
this is
when
where, yes,
you get what
sorry.
I'm saying, so like we're thinking that spirituality has to deal with worshiping gods and ancestors and all this other kind of stuff, and that's part of the cultural part because that has to deal with keeping the cohesion of the community. But real spirituality is the study, the scientific study of nature and using that information to secure food, clothing, shelter. And that's what you see, and that's what like what you saw in ancient Kemet. And they even state, hold on one second, I'm gonna find this citation. So in Eluja volume 2, I wrote a chapter titled, I think this is the African origin of the word science. And so this is part of, as a matter of fact, I have a chapter here, chapter 3, Meta Nature, a catalyst for an African scientific renaissance. So like the questions that you ask is stuff that I've been asking and trying to bring clarity to these concepts and showing how they can be repurposed or refocused in the scientific domain. It's just people have to properly understand the concepts and not try to understand them through myth. But
But
check.
Asa, here's the problem now. Like I understand what you just explained is something that most people in this audience will get it and they will understand. Okay, I think I understand what you mean. It would take a lot of reading to get to that point. But here I have my child going to school, and he has a friend who is telling him, no, we believe in Jesus. He died for us. And when we die, we go into heaven. And another one telling him, in our family, we believe in Prophet Muhammad and this. And my child comes to me and says, who is God? I cannot go into that deep explanation that confuse the child. So I have to tell the child about something about the universe and how the universe is created for their own consciousness. And I cannot start quoting a PhD dissertation to explain to that child what is God and what is the universe. I need a simplistic way to get it to the child. Now, this is where African spirituality, the point where we are. I'm saying, how do we define this reality from the children level, then define it to the academic level, then going to the scientific level? How do we compartmentalize this information so that we don't mix everything, so that there is an understanding to say this is children's story. Now here, when you get to this point in African theology, this is what you need to know now. And at this point, this is where you need to graduate.
That's how it's always been. See, the problem is because of the invasions into Africa, it greatly disrupted the indigenous educational systems. And so this is something that, for example, Dr. Foucault speaks about a lot in his works, and especially like in his PhD dissertation and in a few of his unpublished works that I have. Like that is a focal point of his thing. And matter of fact, Credo Mutwa, everybody had to go underground in terms of the indigenous teachers because they were literally losing their lives and being persecuted for teaching their indigenous African cultural ways in some of these spots, especially in places like the Belgian Congo, at the time. And so because by force, these institutions were either gotten rid of or had to go underground, now you're fighting against the others. Like, for example, when you think about Dr. Malidoma Some, if you're familiar with him, Dagger, also Dagger, like Dr. Tangon. However, he's from Burkina Faso part. So, with the colonial borders, they just split groups in half, but it's just a continuum of Daguerre in Mali, Burkina Faso, and in northern Ghana. So if you understand his story, he tells his story in Of Water and the Spirit. And for those who are unfamiliar with him, he was kidnapped essentially around age 5 and taken 100 miles from his home, where he was brought up and educated with the Jesuit school, with the Jesuit Christians. And so the objective of the colonial schools was to take the kids while they were young, indoctrinate them, and then send them back in positions of power because of their education and whatever kind of degrees and things that they bestowed upon them. And so this set up a dichotomy, because the people that's holding power in the communities now are all the folks who were educated in these European institutions. They did the same thing over here with the Native Americans. Take the Native American children, have them, educated in Catholic or Christian or Jesuit schools, and then send them back to their homelands, in their centers of ethnicity, and in positions of power where now they're ruling and now they're indoctrinated. So, of course, we have to fight this. So it's more so a matter of the institution building. Like if we have to create and control the education from, elementary school on down to the PhD level. And then you have what we did in the early days. And that is, when we were in control of the educational system of the whole community, that stuff was explained. So we gave the young folks the mythology, but as they grew older and went into more schools of initiation, they got the more abstract teachings of it. But the stories were still good just for cultural references.
Right.
So if you are a deep philosophical thinker and you watch the original Matrix series, there's certain aspects of it that you can have a general conversation with in terms of just with laypersons. But there's other aspects you can only discuss with, folks who, have that background, and you can skip all of the basics. And so ultimately, to answer that question, it is the creation of the educational institutes and then having the singular curriculum from when they are, babies into adulthood. Now, I found a citation that I wanted to cite, and it comes from Plato's Timaeus. And they're talking about the Greek philosopher Solon, who was talking to an Egyptian priest. And the priest replied to Solon, the Greek philosopher and student, explains a lot in terms of how they came to their scientific knowledge. So, and this is cited in Dr. Theophilo Benga's 2004 book, African Philosophy, right? The blue book, for those who have it, page 126. But he says, as for the intellectual life, now this is the Egyptian priest talking to Solon, the Greek. As for the intellectual life, you observe, no doubt, what care the law among us, therefore the Egyptians, devotes to it, beginning with the first principles touching upon the universe. Our law has organized all discoveries down to divination and medicine, whose concern is health. From speculation about divinities, it has derived human applications and supervised the acquisition of all other knowledge generated therefrom. And so it's just like what Dr. Tangon said. He said, you got to understand the universe in existence as God. And it's a study of the universe and deifying these particular aspects, because all the deities are really schools of initiation, schools of thought, focus, for the educational system. And so a lot of this is lost because we lost our institutions, our ways of educating. And so when you understand that the divinities are just doors to learning about quantum mechanics or physics or biology and medicine, because a lot of the deities are really aspects of medicines, of leaves, of branches of certain types of trees in the forest and things. And so this is why I have a hard stress in my work, my personal work, on demystifying African spiritual concepts. Once you demystify it, and people don't feel like they have to run around and with candles and incense, you know, to have a deep spiritual experience, they'll understand that it's about reality itself.
So how do you separate that from somebody saying, "Oh, I have to do this sacrifice, and Jehuti appeared to me in the dream, and Jehuti told me to do this, to do that," and then someone who said, "Oh, now Obatala likes red cloth and white cloth. When you wear it, then Obatala will give you so and so blessing." So this aspect, the mythological aspect, the cultural aspect, like for example, I do libation. Okay, I take water in the morning sometimes, and then I pour libation. And in my heart, I speak to my ancestors. And I said, okay, may the day be good. May the day be fresh. May I be free from negative energy. May evil not see me today. May my day be successful. And I pour this libation with the belief that I have spoken to spirit. So now when I go into this scientific aspect, am I now saying that what are the ritual I'm doing there is null and void, or it has no significance?
No, it's you got to understand it within the context of, let me back up. The reason why a lot of spiritual concepts are not really understood is because African people in many respects have lost their sovereignty. All of this stuff, if you run a nation and understand what it means to run a nation, this stuff will make sense to you. And so, as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, some of this stuff has to deal with keeping community together, right? How do I relate to you in my community? What bonds us together? It isn't science, right? There is interpersonal community, is interpersonal relationships.
What stopped me from sleeping with your wife? It has to
You
be
know,
a
so
spiritual reason, that morality.
it's an ethical thing, you know, and
Yeah.
so that's a part of the holistic part of this process. So the science is one part, the ethics is one part, the religion is one part. Religion has to deal with the protocols for when offense happens in the community. So if I stolen from you, how do I repair the relationship, or the how do I regain your trust? What's the first steps in the protocols? See, when people understand this and ask themselves this question, you'll understand the beginning of some of these rituals, because the belief is our ancestors don't die. You know, we say, just like energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it can only change form. So this is a belief that our African ancestors have had since the beginning of time. We don't believe that they're gone, they're here. Now, the thing is that when certain things go wrong in our lives, the belief, this is part of the belief, we believe that we may have offended a spirit, an ancestor. And so, us being humans, we approach the problem the same way that we would approach it with a living human being. This is where the offerings of food and libations and stuff comes with, because the first thing, this is one of the things that I discovered doing research on African concepts of love and etymologies for words for love in African languages. They all come to this notion of open-hearted sharing of food. The protocol is to share food when an offense has happened. That's part of it. That's why you give offerings to deities, because you believe that you offended them. And so to repair this relationship, I need to exchange something and give a gift, because in a human context, you can't be angry eating good food from somebody and having good drink, because it's food that binds the relationships. And so outside even of a an offense context, just traveling, imagine yourself not in modern day, you're in your car. It's still dangerous to travel when you go in your car, but if you're going from village to village and you have, you know, tigers and bears and hyenas and crocodiles and hippos and tsetse fly and all this other kind of dangers that are just out there, you know, going from one village to another is a very dangerous thing. And so it can be exhausting because you're also trying to avoid that. And then you're dealing with the elements. And so when you go to somebody's house, you know, you may be tired from the long journey. So what is the first thing that African people do when you come over to visit? You
Are
offer
you
them
good?
something to eat or to drink,
Yeah.
to restore, to replenish themselves. And so, you know, whatever business that y'all got, it can't go down until you know that this person has you know, been restored to an optimal uh health or whatnot. And so a lot of these spirituality things have to deal with just uh, a, applying what we do as living human beings to the spirit world, especially with ancestors, because we don't believe that they're dead. I mean, that they're gone forever. They're still part of our family. So if we're eating, they eat. But this is all a part of keeping the memory alive of your ancestors. How do you keep the memory alive? You create rituals, you create monuments, you put their name in the stories. You do like what the Yoruba do, and you create orikis, you know, these poems that tell about the accomplishments. They don't have writing, they don't have libraries. So, in order to keep the memory of the ancestors and what they've done, you have to integrate it in the living culture in a way that people won't forget. So you put it in poems, you put it in songs, you put it in carvings, all of that. That's the African pedagogy. And so we have to just kind of remember and put ourselves back into the place where our ancestors were those many, you know, years ago, and not in our modern context. And when they were sovereign, when they were controlling their own destiny. And then what does that mean to control your own destiny? What kind of institutions, what kind of human being did the community have in mind to develop? And so all of this comes into play. Like, this is the stuff that I had to learn throughout the years to look at it as it is, to demystify everything. And now it makes sense. Oh, now I see why, you know, we pour libations and we pour and we give food offerings. You may not you may not expect them to really eat the food, but it's just a gesture, because it's a way to keep in the memory, because human beings forget. And so you have to ritualize things on a periodic basis to keep it in their minds of why you do these things. It's all has to deal with interpersonal relationships. And so I see someone else has come on the stream, and I see Falada, you're on here twice.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
do you want me to remove?
Yeah,
Which one are you on?
I don't even
Okay.
know. Yeah, just drop me and then
All
let me
right.
come back in.
All right. That's what I'll do. So I'm gonna drop both of them. There we go. And then I'm gonna
Yeah,
add
well,
my
so I
comment.
think you're. Oh, okay. Somebody else joined. Your explanation is really, really interesting, and I learned a lot tonight. You know, it's very, very important because people joining African spirituality, these are some of the confusion that they begin to have because we come with a religious mindset. Because most of us that were born in an Islamic family or Christian family, so if you now see I'm embracing African spirituality, you have the idea of, you know, a God sitting somewhere in the sky listening to you or getting angry with you or something. So it's difficult for you to really come to fully embrace this African idea of the universe and then abandoning the Middle Eastern religious concept where there is a natural and supernatural, where there is another universe that is totally detached from us, that we need to, you know, they are physical there too, but then God is totally disconnected from us, and then He has nothing to do with us, and then we have to now beg Him all the time, every day, you know, appease His anger and His ego, pray to Him so that He can have mercy on us, even though He already knows the future. But then the explanation you gave is like, it is this, everything is just what it is. This is the universe, and the creator is within. And then the idea of ancestors, our forefathers did not see ancestors as dead people. For them, they are still with us. So they see it as a continuity of life. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I had a privilege to live in a village in Ivory Coast in the 1990s during the Liberian Civil War. So this village, we were the first religious people, our family, to go there. When we got there, no, there was no Christian, no Muslim. It's in Ivory Coast, in the western part of Ivory Coast. The town is called Ziaglo. So we got there, no church, no mosque. But these people, they had a unique way of living. You know, they have people who who are healers. They have their own area, part of the town where they live. They heal people. So they are no different type of leaves. When you are sick, you go there. They don't pray. They don't kind of like start crying to God to heal you. They ask questions. What happened? And when you explain, they find the right leaves, and then they know what to put on your body, and they know what to give you to drink. And you stay with them for some days, and then you are okay. You come back. Just like hospital. And okay. And there are deities there, the images of deities all around, but you don't see them begging this deity to heal you. They actually look for the medicine, and they come, they give you the right medicine. And
Because the deities are medicine. That's why I read from the thing. A womb, by God definition, is anything that can work but not be seen and includes the smaller beings of specialized and limited activity associated with medicines and magic. Like even when you go to the ancient Egyptian texts, those deities are associated with plants in medicine. Isis, Osiris, all of these folks, they're associated with plants and medicines. All the main focus, Europeans are great at weaponry because they've been fighting for 10,000 years. So when you've been fighting continent wide for that long, you become a master of creating those instruments of warfare. But in Africa, their primary focus was health and medicine. And so when you get into these indigenous villages, that's what it is. That's what their main focus was. Wasn't necessarily, you have some who especially those who were nomads who like to pay attention to the stars because like that was their navigation systems. But they weren't out there. They were in the bush, in the forest, which is why in ancient Egypt, they had to recreate the forest. We call them a temple. But when you go to the Batwa in Democratic Republic, there's no temples because they live in the forest. The gods, the deities are in the trees, they're in the plants. And that's what I mean. Once you demystify everything, is exactly what you experienced, in that particular village.
Right.
And can I add something?
Who's that?
This is Father Day.
Okay, there you go. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe Brother Sir actually released a video a long time ago about Betty, and I believe that was about the art of home training, something like that.
Oh,
And
exactly.
yeah, and I believe he introduced us to the concept of to sit, and where you sit is where you dwell,
Hmm.
and where you dwell is where you share things, and where you learn good character.
Hmm.
And it basically means, if I can remember, it's connected to placing things on top of something, and that just connects to the idea of libation and offering. And so, like, where you keep your ancestor, where you bury the dead, is where they dwell, and you share food. Since where you live or where you sit, you share food with people. When you go see your ancestor where they dwell, you share food with them. And it just reinforces that idea of, since that's where they dwell, when you go over to go chill with them, since they're always alive, you share some food. So it shouldn't really, I guess, people shouldn't really look at it as, um these are your ancestors. You're going over there. It's basically the same thing as wherever you sit, you give offerings, and wherever you dwell, that's where they are, and that's where they sit. So that's where they are. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Yeah,
I
right,
just thought
right,
that's a perfect correlation.
I'm
right.
pulling up the the presentation that you mentioned, um, and so, for example, these are words for to sit. In Chiluba, Chikomo, Inkum, Inkam, Mukam, to sit. Location, Shikama, sit, be seated. Wait, be quiet. Ikala, to sit, to remain, to be still. A synonym in Chiluba is somba, sit, live, reside. Conduct, sit down, to chat, retire, relax. Chiensombelu, Chiensombedi, living room, lounge, residence. Lusombelo, Chiensombedi, where one sits, shelter. See also Yoruba Gunle, to settle. Arabic Akama, to settle, to stay in a place, right? So it's the, I know there's a slide on here. I think this is it here. From Felipe Evangelista, Rosa Vieira. And let me make sure. Hold on. Oops. The joint season, man. Okay, so I'll read this. So in it's from this article. You must have people to make business. Relations of proximity in small scale trade in Haiti and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So remember, a lot Haiti, has a lot of kind of Yoruba culture, but also a lot of culture from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so from here in this article, it states in the dry season between May and September, it is not easy to buy many gallons of palm oil. It rains seldom. There are less fruits on the palm trees to produce the oil, and the price increases. This prompted Ma Julie to turn to sources of income other than her trade in gallons. She began to rent land in another village to plant beans and sell them in the city. Unlike her home village, this was not a place where she had family and people. The first time she went to plant, she slept in the house of the owners of the land she had rented. The second time, the house was no longer available. Ma Julie ended up sleeping in the house of Ma Tanya, a young woman she had met only recently. When I asked Ma Julie how she had begun to frequent this house, she replied, I know how to relate. Nayebi Vanda. I make some food. I give a little bit of sugar to people. We get on well. I can relate with anyone. You need to know how people behave, right? As we can see, Ma Julie uses the term Vanda, which has various senses in Lingala. This is a Bantu language in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Two in particular are important to understanding the meaning of relating with one another. It can be used in the sense of dwell. Where do you live? O Vanda Wapi. And it may be said that knowing how to Vanda also involves knowing how to live with the other. As Ma Julie makes clear, it presumes knowing how to share food and a space, whether a house, a market, or a neighborhood. To some extent, it would be even possible to conceive the idea of knowing how to dwell in the other, because knowing Vanda, bien, requires comprehending the other to the point of putting oneself in their skin, understanding the difficulties that the other person is facing. Vanda is also used to refer to the verb to sit on the chair, Vanda nakiti. And we can venture to the idea knowing how to Vanda also entails knowing how to sit with the other, since the act of sitting is closely associated with conversation. In Lingala, for example, before starting a conversation, people will usually say, "Come, let's sit. Yaka tuvanda nabiso." Or, "Do you want to come over to the house? We can sit and chat." To sit with someone is to share a moment with them in order to exchange. And this exchange very often refers to commercial activity, whether maintaining partnerships or creating new ones. The seat in African societies is a symbol of the primary location in a community where the spirit of the ancestors are virtually still making commandments and guiding the community. And this is actually my writing from Nesubiti. The seat is the landing place for the ancestors. The seat can be seen in many ways as an altar or a shrine. In the Congo, a seat is used as an emblem of the ancestors being welcomed on their journey back to the community from their realm in the forest or the ocean. In the Congo, they have a body pose or gesture called Nuvuanda, which is just a variation of that word Vanda that we saw earlier, which can be seen in the Kumina religious tradition in Jamaica. The word Nuvuanda means welcome to the ancestors, but has a literal meaning of please have a seat. And this is why, for example, you see words for ancestors in the ancient Egyptians of the revered person sitting down on the seat or the throne. Like when people look at a throne in African societies, it is not this necessarily the seat for the king. It is a shrine for the ancestor that the king is supposed to represent. And so when a king is seated, for example, 3 times, the ancestor is being called to the seat. And it's at the shrines that you share food and ask of things because you want an exchange. Ancestors, can you look out for me? What in the world of dangers do you see that we can't see? Can you give us some protection? Can you come in my dreams and provide me an answer to this deep question? And when you're doing that, you're exchanging food in conversation. Everything spiritual has just a common everyday human interaction aspect to it that is just scaled to the so-called spiritual realm. But I think that's what you were speaking about. And so I'll stop sharing now to Brother Falade. And you're on here twice again, so I don't know which one is the real you. So you could just unmute your mic, Falade. All right, and I'll just remove this one.
Okay, I guess my
There we go.
spirit shadow wants to come on too. Yeah, but
So I don't know how much of that you caught. I didn't get
no,
to
yeah, I
see.
caught all of that. I caught all of that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. So that's really connected to libations and why we reach out to the ancestors, because where they dwell, we're going to hang out with them. So, we share some things with them. So, and the village is where people dwell. So they learn good character. They don't try to kill people in the village. So the village is focused on good character, um you know building good character, basically. So I guess that's the way people should look at it, and yeah, that's what I have to say on libations.
Hold on.
So
I
my
want to
final
answer this.
question before I keep quiet.
Hold on. I want to answer this question from the chat first.
Okay.
And I brought it up earlier. It says the language meta nature is key to our resurrection, the mother language to all Alkebulan's language. And the language is the culture. In the language is the culture. Africology, question mark. And so I hear this all the time. And people think that learning the ancient Egyptian meta nature, the Sesh meta nature, which is actually the writing script. The language is called, Ryan Kemet, the language of Kemet. That's what they call their language. The writing script is Sesh meta nature. But people think that, but for the sake of conversation, we'll equate the language to meta nature. So people think that by learning meta nature, that it's just going to open some sacred key and all this wisdom and knowledge is going to start flowing in or whatnot, and that is the origin. It is not the origin of African languages. It is the oldest African written language. It is not the oldest language. And this is part of the reason why I do the studies that I do, because you know the Ryan Kemet, the Egyptian language, is no more sacred than Yoruba, is no more sacred than Wolof, than Seer, than Dogon language, than Tree, than Isizulu, Isikosa, because all the words that you find in the Egyptian language, you find in these languages. And so, and while I do recommend studying the ancient Egyptian writing script and language, I highly recommend that you learn a living African language so that you can actually speak with living African people and you can conduct living African business, and we can, do more. And so it's the Egyptian language is no more sacred than any other African language. It's just a dialect of the same language. So if you learn Yoruba, you learn Meta Nature. If you learn Tree, you learn Meta Nature. If you learn, Mande, you learn Meta Nature. All the words in phrases and things, they're there. And so that's why, like when, if you worship in Zombie, or you use that name, it's no different than the word Amen in the ancient Egyptian. It's the same deity. It's just a dialectical variation of the same term. So this is one of the reasons why I do the language comparison, so you can see that, it's Egyptian is unique, but it's not special. Because these same concepts, these other Africans, your West African ancestors inherited, and this is how they worship Amen here. This is how they worship what is become Osiris here. This is how they do this particular ritual that you find over here. It's because of a common ancestry. And so we don't know what the mother language is called. We give reconstructions, but so no, it's not going to the heavens are not going to open if you learn the Egyptian meta nature. But before I know Muhammad's been here patiently waiting, and then we'll get to Brother Sean P. Mohammed, peace and blessings, and welcome to the program.
Hi, you hear me well?
I can hear you, but you sound very low.
How about now? Clear now?
We can still hear you, still, or at least on my end, you sound still kind of low. So I don't know if you have the microphone directly, in front of you, or if you're on speaker or something like that. But
I think I have some kind of problems with my always, because the device that I'm using is not that sophisticated. So
okay. Well,
yeah,
we'll just have to make it do what it do. We'll just have to listen closely.
But it's
Well, go
it's
ahead.
is it very unclear or
No, right now is better. It's a lot better. Whatever you just did right now.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you can hear me, if I started to recede and started to become more unclear, just let me know. But for now, yeah, I just wanna, just want to extend my gratitude to you as usual, and all the family here, all the brothers and sisters here, and it's
Yo.
yeah, yeah, and it's very fascinating. It's a very fascinating discussion, and you know, I actually saw your video yesterday, and it really provoked lots of thoughts and ideas, and reflections in my mind, because it's just the linguistic, your linguistic work, your linguistic comparisons is thought it was very interesting. And on that note, I wanna say to you, ai eka doli, which is love in Nubian language.
Okay.
And of course, miska gro to all of you, which is a greetings in Nubian language as well. But,
Appreciate it.
I say.
All righty. Hold on one second. I'm gonna answer this question. I know I'm gonna go back and forth. So comment from the panel, then we'll go to the chat. And so someone asked, Asar, do you know of any Egyptian texts that reference reincarnation? I've often heard people say that Egyptians believe in reincarnation, but I have never seen any text showing that. I'll do a show on that. Because there are texts. And matter of fact, in the ancient Egyptian society, the ultimate goal was to stop reincarnation. So the whole point of becoming an Ak and a star is so that you can gain essentially free will, and that you can be what you want at will, and you can come in and out of existence at will. And you get see, this is why I wish I was back in Philly, so I could just reach behind my back and just pull my books out. But if you ever get a chance, there's a book, the Book of the Dead, and it has the hieratic transcriptions and the actual visual visnets of the entire series of the Book of the Dead. And in there, you'll see some of the passages where they talk about reincarnation and how they're trying to earn their way into free will, and that they can become anything that they want. And so this will require a show that I can have the citations there for you. And so I'm unprepared at the present moment, but off the top of my head, I know for a fact that is the case, that they believed in reincarnation. And two types of reincarnation. First is this kind of, the spiritual essence that, passes on, from generation to generation. And then also you have reincarnation in the context of your name. And so every time that you name your children after an ancestor, that is a reincarnation in ancient Egyptian society, as well as many other societies, especially among the collagen as well. And I discussed that in Illusion Volume 2. If you have that text, Womp Womp, the person who asked this question, if you have Illusion Volume 2, in the second part of the book, I forgot exactly what chapter, but I talk about reincarnation, and I give some of those citations there. But yes, the Egyptians do talk about reincarnation, and their ultimate goal was to stop reincarnation. So in that, and did you have a comment or question, Brother Muhammad, that you wanted to talk about or want to address?
uh, I just, I'm so happy. I'm so happy, so overwhelmed, with the, with all the, all the troves, all the knowledge that you keep spreading. And I mean, yeah, I do have lots of thoughts, but I really like to, enjoy continuing, learning, and just absorbing, all the stuff. I continue to, sort of like, fumble my way, like through. It's a very, the your work, your linguistic work actually sparked some sort of interest in me, because it's extremely rigorous. It's extremely rigorous. And I was actually contemplating the in terms of your methodologies, and all that. How do we, when you're speaking about uh, like stuff like linguistics, the sound variance correspondence methodology, or the historical comparative methodology, or reconstruction, or phonology, phonetics, all that kind of stuff. So the idea that when you showed us the video of TikTok in the beginning, right? That I'm very familiar with that sentiment, because I'm from Sudan, and I'm very familiar with Egypt. I'm very familiar with the with the general sensibility, like particularly the extreme resistance and extreme insistence on tying ancient Egypt, to a particular type of phenotype, particular type of linguistic genealogy, all that stuff. So in that respect, I really appreciate the fact that you are doing this sort of, like almost unbelievable project of connecting and drawing comparisons rigorously and scientifically of Egyptian, ancient Egypt, Meta Nature, or ancient Egyptian languages in general, to to Yoruba, Asante, Igbo, and even Zulu. In that respect, I was kind of, I was a little bit, I was inquisitive about that your work. I'm assuming that it applies. Does it apply? It applies also to ancient. I mean, I know that ancient Nubian text hasn't been, at least, I mean, the written text, the spoken text is actually almost facing extinction right now. But the written text hasn't been decoded.
The Moretic.
Yeah, the Meroitic text. Yeah, and I was able to, I was, very privileged to listen to also some Sudanese scholars who actually uh, doing some archaeological, linguistic archaeology, and physical anthropology, anthropology stuff in Sudan, that they are they are making some hypothesis that the Nubian text is even older than the Middle Nature, or
Mhm.
it's sort of like the proto kind of the proto structure that gave rise to Middle Nature. I don't know to what extent uh, you would verify that
Mhm.
or rebut it, but the this idea of this kind of connection, this massive network of connection, do you think it also applies to the Nubian text, the Denka, Nuer, Shuluk, Aromo, Tikrinja, Amharic? Because I say this to say that, especially in Abyssinia or in Habasha, in Ethiopia, there is, and this is goes back to what we talked about, like last time.
Mhm.
There is they usually the world or the European uh, the European expansive or the Asian anti-black, Egyptological discourse relies on the fact that, like what they are suggesting in the video, they will say that, see, yes, the Amharic text, the Tigrinya text has, they would use similar, so I don't know linguistics, but they would use some sort of, like the methodologies that you're using, in terms of like the historical comparative linguistics, the reconstruction, and they will use that's why I really wish to, because it's really interesting, to actually to verify that, to draw connections between the Amharic text, which is in
Yeah.
Abyssinia, to ancient Semitic text and ancient Phoenician text, which also has a parental relationship to modern Arabic. I mean, Arabic is my modern my mother tongue, so to speak. So I
Mhm.
know Arabic, even the form of the Arabic of antiquity very, very, very well.
Mhm.
And like when you see the work, it kind of, you can, like it kind of makes sense, but I know that it's not, because I don't know how the methodology was being conducted. I mean, I'm not able to I'm not able to follow the logic of it, and this is why, remember last time I was kind of little bit skeptical about, because I really, I always try remaining skeptical about things like scientific methodology, the Afro-Asiatic Afro-Asiatic linguistic model, sub-Saharan. These terms make me very anxious, make me
Mhm.
very, because it's, they trying to, what I get from these terms is, they trying to draw cast a particular picture of the I'm sorry for ranting, but
Yeah, it
I'll
seems
stop.
like, are you essentially asking, in terms of a relationship between the ancient Egyptian and the Sudanic languages and cultures, and possibly, of course, the Amharic, and with the Gayas writing, and things of that nature. I know there's some people who have been doing some work with the the Amharic language, and finding correspondences there. Uh, and then, of course, with these Sudanese languages, to what extent, whether it's, genetic, or their aerial features, meaning because of the long-term interactions, are there features of the languages that are shared because of those interactions, and not necessarily inheritance. And so this is an ongoing thing, especially, a good works
Yes.
that I recommend is Dr. Kipkowicz Sambu, who, dealing with the collagen history, and language, and cultures. And so there's is even European scholars who have come in the late 1800s, who have come and recorded the oral tradition of the collagen actually originating in ancient Egypt, and during the Greek times, they're being forced through the Sudan down into Uganda, and now they're in Kenya and western part of Ethiopia, and to an extent, the Democratic Republic of Congo on the west side. Um, but it's being able to attack those oral histories, and and so Dr. Kipkoech Sambu, he got his PhD in Coptic studies in South Africa, and of course did a lot of work in Egypt. And his PhD dissertation is on the verifying the oral tradition of his people, uh, and in part of that includes the listing and comparing of vocabulary and certain grammar features of the collagen, and so we argue that the collagens originate in Sudan and was part of the military uh, regiment in ancient Egypt, and during the time, like they even still have certain Greek loan words in their language. Um, were forced down, to the south, and they migrated, throughout those 2,000 years later into their present locations. But there is work being done along those lines, and that's just the kind of stuff that I try to highlight. Now, I wish, because the problem with Sudan is the instability in certain areas because of the lasting wars that have happened, and it hasn't been conducive to be able to record, if anything, those indigenous languages that are left, to be able to do some serious comparisons. But there are some scholars who are doing that work, and so I have some studies on Sudanic languages, but I don't concentrate on them because I'm primarily, you know, Bantu and
Yeah.
Yoruba and Akan based in terms of the languages that
Right.
I usually compare. So, but yeah, that work is being done. But I know we have the Jean who just joined us, and I want to go to Sean P. Then I'm gonna go back to Sakal, and then we're gonna go to the Jean, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly. So peace and blessings, brother Sean P. Welcome to the program, and what's on your mind?
Peace, brother. So I appreciate you having me. Peace to everybody on the panel. I want to change the topic a little bit to get away from ancient Kemet, and I want to kind of draw you into a previous conversation that's been had over the past couple of days.
Okay.
So we're dealing with Fukuyama's work. Okay.
Alrighty.
Did a show regarding mapping the universe, dealing with African cosmology, other Bantu Congo principles of life.
Okay.
In that show, I basically was dealing with the Bantu Congo teachings out of Fukuyama's book, page 22 to like 20, what is it, 24.
The
Yeah.
2001 book, the African Cosmology, the Bantu Congo, correct?
Right.
All right. So let me.
Okay, so dealing with that particular book. Now, in this book, he clearly is explaining old teachings from the Congo.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so to draw a parallel to to see what the science is saying as a correlation, not to say that this was being scientific at all, but just correlation, right? Because I can't do one thing and then do the other. So, I go through the mapping the universe. Then I go to Krauss's work about the universe, and Neil deGrasse Tyson's work about the universe.
Krauss is the invisible, the nothing book.
Yep. Hold on, let me get it.
I don't know if y'all know, I'm writing a book called Quantum Mechanics as African Inheritance. and Fukiao, I cite Fukiao, and then of course I cite Cross and show these exact parallels. But go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, we're about to talk about this because Unc is up in arms. Lawrence Krauss, A Universe from Nothing, 2013. Neil deGrasse Tyson and Goldsmith's Origins, 14 Billion Years of Cosmic Evolution. And then there's some astrophysical journals and things of that nature, like the Journal of Detection of Non-Thermal Radio Continuum, Spokes and the Study of Star Formations in the Cartwheel. That's written by a bunch of authors, but that's a 2004 by DeGrasse and Matthews. And then another astronomical journal, Optical Imaging and Spectroscopy of the Edge on SBC Galaxy. So the point of this being, well, I think you passed, go back up. You passed a couple pages. But it says mapping the universe, and it's on you passed about like a couple pages. Let me see where you are now. Go up some more.
Go up. I'm increasing in numbers.
Oh, no, my bad. You go on to 28. Go back toward 22, page 22. There you go. Boom. So we ain't got to, you right there. All right. So now, in what I was
this is my
with,
scanned book. So you if you see the lines, and that's just my notes. So I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good, because I had to scan it. Because I was just dealing with certain parts too. So in this right now, he's basically talking about the old Congo teachings, and then I go to the experts in astrophysics. The problem lies here is that Unc says this from this page all the way to the end is completely wrong. All of it is wrong, right? And they, doesn't give the teachings any credit. Now, there's no scientific claims being made here. They're just saying there's teachings. But there seems to be a very big problem with how people are perceiving these things to be something, because I draw a correlation between the Bantu teachings and what science is saying today.
Yeah, it's.
But here's my thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but here's my thing. So, all right, now I know I'm asking the right person, because when it comes down to research methodology, you teach a class and a course. For people who are interested in it, you can go on the website, sign up for the class. So work at your own pace. It's good to do. But if we're being scientific, right? If we're trying to advance knowledge, correct what needs to be corrected, and advance information forward, right? Using the tools that we have and in the body of knowledge and framework that we have, how would someone have a problem with the Congo teachings?
He doesn't understand them. And of course, Unc is my brother, and I love him, but he's not really savvy on African religion, spiritual concepts, languages, or culture. And so he doesn't know what these words mean. He doesn't fully understand. See, what people don't know is that this is like my favorite book of all time. African Cosmology in the Bantu Congo. This is the book that started me seriously doing Bantu and ancient Egyptian comparisons. And it was only after I was able to develop a certain skill set in linguistics was I able to, and this will come out in the book later, to demonstrate that the Bantu Congo cosmology in culture is the exact same as what you find in ancient Kemet. And there's methods that, of course, that when we're showing these words and concepts that are essential. And you mentioned Krauss's book, and so I think it's a universe from nothing, right? Where he
Correct.
talks about that nothing is really not nothing. That there's something there, and there's this movement of particles and antiparticles that ultimately give way to the universe. And you see that same type of language. This was produced before Krauss's book, so he couldn't have borrowed it from there. And let me see the I may have, I'm gonna go back up. And so so when you're seeing like this, let me go back. The Mbongi in the empty, like this is an empty universe, and a fire force, emerges and explodes projectiles from the center. This is exactly what you find in the modern standard model when it comes to the creation of our particular universe.
He said it was no fire.
It's not an issue, regardless of if it's fire. It was an intense. We know for a fact that it was an intense heat and intense temperatures that after the so-called Big Bang.
Right.
And so we got to understand the nature of the language. They don't have words, the kind of scientific words that are being used in modern cosmology. And so they're using the words in which they have in their language. And so to represent this particular fire force is all the same. Matter of fact, there's a lecture. So when it's interesting, like for example, when the ancient Egyptians are talking about, the Nun, for example, or the Nu. And I show in the text that the word Nu is cognate with this word Mbongi that they're using, that is represented here. And the language that they use, I'm gonna see if I can find it. Let me stop sharing here. And because I know I have it saved somewhere on my YouTube, because I created some folders. And so let me go back here. I should have a cosmology playlist. So I'm gonna give y'all one of my secrets right here as soon as I can find it. And you're gonna look at the language. See, the point of this is to listen to the language that the scientist is saying here. So hold on one sec. Okay, so the different one. Is it the watch later folder? Let me go there. So bong. Here we go. Quantum fields. So I'm going to share my screen. And so we're going to share the audio to the Chrome tab. Boom. So, oops. Can y'all hear the commercial?
Fair. Finally, it doesn't.
Yes.
All right.
Physics.
So this is David Tong, who's an astrophysicist. And the title of the talk is called Quantum Fields, the Real Building Blocks of the Universe. Right? So I don't know if it's time. I know it's at the beginning. So first of all, look at the graphics that are being used. Hold on. So we're going to start kind of somewhat at the beginning of his talk, and then I'm going to stop it when he makes this particular type of statement. So hopefully y'all can hear it well. and we'll go. So
in this talk, I should warn you now, not least because I'm going to discuss every single thing in the universe, quite literally. We're going to talk, amongst other things, about what's happening at the world's most powerful particle collider. This is a machine that's called the Large Hadron Collider, or the LHC for short. It'll come up a lot in this talk. And it's a machine which is based underground in a place called CERN, which is just outside Geneva. We'll also talk about experiments in the last few years that look backwards in time towards the Big Bang, that give us some understanding about what was happening in the first few fractions of a second after time itself started to exist. And on top of all this, I also want to give you some idea about the theoretical abstract ideas, and even a little bit idea about the mathematics that underlies our current understanding of the universe. Because I'm a theoretical physicist. What I do is study the equations, try to understand the equations that govern the world we live in. And so I'd just like to give you a flavor of what that's about. At some point, I should warn you now, at some point, I'm even going to show you an equation. Okay, you know that you can get sent on training courses for this kind of thing. There's a number one rule. The number one rule is never show them any equations. If you show them equations, you'll just terrify them. At some point in this lecture, you're all going to be terrified. So just prepare yourselves. Okay. You know, there's a traditional way to start talks like this. The traditional way is to be very cultured and talk about what Democritus and Lucretius said 2,500 years ago, and the ideas that the ancient Greeks had about atoms. But you know, I don't want to start like this. We've made a lot of progress in 2,500 years, and you know, there's just better places to kick off a science talk. So the first modern picture that we had of what the universe is made of, everything we're made of, is this. So I hope this is familiar to most people here. This is the periodic table of elements. Okay, it's one of the most iconic images in all of science. What we have here are 120-ish different elements. I should point out no less than 10 of which were discovered in this very building, and which constitute, or at least in the 1800s, were thought to constitute everything that existed in nature. So it's certainly true that any material you get, you can distill it down into its component parts, and you'll find that all of those component parts are made of one of these 120 elements. So it's a great moment in science. It's really one of the triumphs of science. It's also, I should add, the reason that I stopped doing chemistry in school. Because if you're a chemist, this is basically as good as it gets. And you know, if we're honest, it's kind of a mess, right? You know, everything in the universe is classified into things on the left that go bang if you put them in water, through to things on the right, which really, if we're honest, don't do very much at all. You kind of organize everything into this stupid shape. So there's it looks a little bit like Australia. There's a big dip in the top, and then there's these two strips of elements that you have to put along the bottom because there's no room for them in the middle where they belong. You know, I don't know about you. If I was asked to come up with a fundamental classification of everything in the universe, this isn't what I would have gone for. Are there any chemists in the audience? I'm sorry for you. Okay, but you know, I'm not alone in this. It's not just me that thinks this is a silly way to organize nature. Nature itself thinks this is a silly way to organize nature. Of course, we know this isn't the fundamental, this isn't the end of the story. This isn't the fundamental building blocks. And the first person to realize there's something deeper than this was a Cambridge physicist called J.J. Thomson. So at the end of the 1800s, J.J. Thomson discovered a particle that was smaller than an atom that we now call the electron. And in 1897, he announced this in this room, in fact, in this very lecture series, to a stunned audience. An audience that was so stunned that at least half of them didn't believe what he was saying. There was one very distinguished scientist who afterwards told J.J. Thomson he thought the whole thing was a hoax, that J.J. Thomson had just been pulling their leg. But of course, it's not a hoax. This isn't the fundamental elements of nature. And within 15 years of J.J. Thomson's discovery, his successor in Cambridge, a man called Ernest Rutherford, had figured out exactly what these atoms are made of. And this is the picture that Rutherford came up with So we now know that each of these elements consists of a nucleus, which is tiny. The metaphor that Rutherford himself used was it's like a fly in the center of the cathedral. And then orbiting this nucleus in, I should add, fairly blurry orbits are the electrons, which sort of fill out very sparsely the rest of the
It should be coming
space.
up soon.
So that's a picture of these atoms. Subsequently, we learned that the nucleus is not itself fundamental. The nucleus contains smaller particles. They're particles that we call protons and neutrons. And in the 1970s, we learned that the protons and neutrons aren't fundamental either. So in the 1970s, we learned that inside each proton and neutron are three smaller particles that we call quarks. There are two different kinds of quarks. By the 1970s, I'm guessing physicists didn't have a classical Greek education and they'd kind of run out of, classy names. So we call these quarks the up quark and the down quark, okay? For no good reason. It's not like the up quark is higher than the down quark. It's not like it points up, but just no good reason at all. The up quark and the down quark. So the proton consists of two up quarks and a down quark, and the neutron consists of two down quarks and an up quark, okay? This, as far as we know, are the fundamental building blocks of nature. We've never discovered anything smaller than the electron, and we've never discovered anything smaller than the quarks. So we have three particles of which everything we know is made. And it's worth stressing, that's kind of astonishing. It's we sort of take it for granted. We learn this in school. We don't really think about it deeply. Everything we see in the world, all the diversity in the natural world, you, me, everything around us, we just the same three particles with slightly different rearrangements repeated over and over and over again. It's an amazing lesson to draw about how the world is put together. So that's what we have. We have an electron and two quarks. And, these aren't the fundamental building blocks that the Greeks had thought about, and they're certainly not the fundamental building blocks that the Victorians had thought about. But, the spirit of the issue really hasn't changed. The spirit is exactly what Democritus said 2,500 years ago. It's that there are like Lego bricks from which everything in the world is constructed. These Lego bricks are particles, and the particles are the electron and two quarks. It's a very nice picture. It's a very comforting picture. It's the picture we teach kids at school. It's the picture we even teach our students in undergraduate university. And there's a problem with it. The problem is it's a lie. It's a white lie. It's a white lie that we tell our children because, we don't want to expose them to the difficult and horrible truth too early on. It makes it easier to learn if you believe that these particles are the fundamental building blocks of the universe. But it's simply not true. The best theories that we have of physics do not have underlying them the quark particle and the two quark particle, and the electron particle and the two quark particles. In fact, the very best theories we have of physics don't rely on particles at all. The best theories we have tell us that the fundamental building blocks of nature are not particles, but something much more nebulous and abstract. The fundamental building blocks of nature are fluid-like substances which are spread throughout the entire universe and ripple in strange and interesting ways. Okay.
Did you hear him?
Yes, sir.
So when we talk about fields in physics, the only way that they can describe the fields from which these particles emerge is that it is a fluid-like substance that permeates throughout all of existence. You find that in Foucault's work. You find that in ancient Egypt. You find that throughout Africa. The language, the language even that they have to use today to describe it is still in the same poetic fashion in which the ancient Africans used it. And so when we're having these conversations about commonalities, we don't argue that they came to these conclusions based off of experiments like in a large hadron collider.
Right.
Whatever the process was, they came to a consensus and a theory based on some other observations that they scaled to the level of the universe. And for them, they knew that all life came out of water, and so there must be this infinite, watery, fluidy source from which emerged everything else. All the deities which become the building blocks of all of everything else. And Tangan mentioned that when we had him on, and you can actually read his work dealing with the Daguerre. This is exactly what you find in the ancient Egyptian culture, and it's what you find in Congo. And I'm gonna add in there also the Bassa in Cameroon have the same similar thing. And they're all cognate, or at least on the African side, they're all cognate terms. So this idea is very old. And so all you can, like, how I would argue it is that the Africans have produced a body of knowledge that is scientifically testable. It's not necessarily that they are right in all aspects, but they produced hypotheses that are scientifically testable. And so it's about understanding the language and what they are doing. And so it's just like, I don't know if you was here at the beginning when we started the discussion with Brother Sakau, when we talked about that African pedagogy and how they create the myths and things for people who are younger, but the more abstract and deeper thoughts are for the more advanced, the PhD students. You see the same language and articulation here that we tell the children in high school and even in the freshman year at college that the fundamental building blocks, consist of these atoms and the up and down quark and and the proton. And then what did he say? It's a lie. This is what we tell them because this is what they can comprehend. Because when he's talking about this fluidity and stuff like this, these are mathematical abstractions.
Wow, that's powerful.
The African people have the same type of pedagogy, except ours is a little bit more creative. And so one of the reason why I'm writing the book and why I say that quantum is titled Quantum Mechanics or Quantum Field Theory is African Inheritance. If the invasions of Africa would not have happened, who knows how far along the trek along this scientific plane that we would have gotten to. The only reason why science has been arrested in Africa is because we have been trying to deal with survival for the last 500, 600 years as a result of the invasions. But we were already along this path. And so this is the framework. So the key is understanding the language, understanding the framework, and not being caught in the children's story, but understanding the deep science and aspects of exactly what they're saying. A lot of what you'll find in these African traditions, when you get some teachings in some higher schools, mirrors a lot of what you'll find. You're not going to get Schrodinger's equations out of these African religious traditions. It's not going to get that detailed, but the overall framework, they kind of coincide with a lot of the theories that have developed over the years. And so, for someone to deny that, they don't know enough. Like I can pull the sources out easy. As soon as you said cross, I knew who you were talking about.
But I was drawing I was drawing correlations, and that's what shocked me is like, no, I'm not saying this is that. This is why I showed the teaching. That's why I went to Fukiao. I
Mm-hmm.
showed the teachings about how they understood how things come to be through their teachings, and then this is what science says.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow I'm wrong, and the Congo and Fukiao was all the way wrong. He didn't know who Fukiao was at first, and then Ben had to remind him, like, this is a prestigious person that you're talking about, and you're trying to gloss over his work and just say his work is wrong. And then Fukiao comes to at that tail end of what he was explaining in the red state, the green state, the green state, the gray state, and the red state. He comes in and he clearly says, to our knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says, to our present knowledge, our planet, the Earth, is the only planet known that has so far fulfilled all stages, or what he would call of a green state. He had a problem with green state. I said, he's just saying something that he could correlate it to, saying that the Earth, he said, but it's a rock. Like, you're fighting too much. Just slow down and understand that he's just calling it. This the only place that we know that life exists, right?
Exactly.
As we know it. We can't look in our solar system and determine other planets similar to Earth. But when we look at the teachings, when he says, when he defines what he means by a gray state, he says without life. We can look in this solar system and we can determine planets without life. And then he says, similar what a red state is. They're hot planets. They haven't gone through their maturation. They're still burning planets, so to say. But that's a problem for And I'm like, can we not look in our solar system and determine those planets that have not went through a maturation?
Yeah, I mean, I have no other way to. He's just not. That's not his area. Archaeology, is what, to. I haven't been keeping up with the whole vaccine debates and discussions, but when it comes to physics and quantum mechanics and all that, like, I'm in a stage right now, like I'm going through courses to fully learn the mathematics of Einstein's relativity equations, and because I want to understand this stuff at a deep level so that I can say to what extent in a very real way that the ancient African schools, in what aspects do they correlate to what is the current consensus in a particular area in modern science, and in where they differ. And so the problem is that, not saying that you said, but we know others have said, this is the exact same thing. They come to the exact same conclusion. It's just like what Christians do with, so-called prophecy. Something similar happens, and then it'll be like, see, the Bible predicted this. It's like, no, it did not.
Right.
That's not what it's. And there's a phrase and a term for that. I can't remember it. It slipped my mind at the moment. But
I really think Fukiao did a good job of trying to, like you said, make it to where you could comprehend it at a basic level of what he's saying and not being so technical. But science gives you a full explanation based on data that's been collected over a series of times using tools that, of course, ancient Congo, ancient Kemet, and all over Africa, they don't have. But we don't care how they got it. And we said that we don't know how they come to some of the conclusions that they did in their teachings. However, they came to some of those conclusions, and some of that stuff was, could be seen as substantiated by modern science today based on that. But the correlations are there. I mean, it's like you can't put them side by side. Why not? What are we reviewing the literature for if we're not going to advance that knowledge? This is a body of, I don't think you get that part. This is a body of knowledge that we can consume, right? And then we can go into modern science and see what we can correct. And I thought that's what we actually were trained to do. This is why I brought the methodology class up and course up first, because they never read Fukuyama's work until, I guess today they're reading it live on the show. But this is what I thought, you know, from a scientific mind, being science enthusiasts and being scientific in our endeavors, we were supposed to do, because it's about advancing knowledge and using those tools to help us correct some of the things from old and to bring them into a new.
Indeed. I'm trying to find this. I forgot what presentation. I know it was science versus mythology. It was something along those lines. Because Credo Mutwa has in his Indaba My Children text, he talks about the teachings, the level of teachings, and the, let me see, trying to, which
I'm gonna try to find it.
In Indaba My Children.
Yeah, I got the book in my hand.
It's when he's being initiated, and so it's somewhere towards the back, maybe the 3/4 of the way. He's going through his initiation, and it should be close to, you'll see a picture of a wooden canoe with a face facing each other, like two faces facing each other.
Okay, I'm looking. I think I found it. I just went past it. Nope, that's those images are in They Who Must Die chapter.
See, I got so many damn PowerPoints now. I don't know where.
Okay, it's not the symbols. I've seen them twice. You said, okay, tell me what it was one more time. It was
it's going to talk, it's the section where he's talking about being initiated into Sangomahood. And he's going to talk about who and what God is. And then you're going to see a wooden photo. Excuse me, not a wooden photo. A photo of a drawing of a carving of a, and it's going to have two faces on it. So they're going to be facing each other like this. So if it's like a boat looking like this, and it's going to have two faces facing each other like this, because it's supposed to represent God being able to look forever in the past and forever in the future.
So
I'm so mad. I cannot remember right off the bat.
Yeah, I think I might be close. I was looking because he had some symbols.
Yeah, the writing, it may be past that.
And all of that was about death. The story of Lumu come down. No, that's too early in the book.
No, I know it's towards the back.
Okay, that's the drums. Y'all seen us hold up the book, so y'all know how the book
where
is.
it had three faces.
It's two faces.
Oh, yeah, two faces facing each other, but then there is one other phase in the middle.
What page are you
Oh,
on?
So page 563.
Yeah, I'm in the sixes.
Yeah, so I
5.
have this images right here.
yep.
It's
I
not
think.
this.
Yeah, I saw.
All right. I said now I don't know what the exact page is,
Right.
but I'm trying to find my notes, and because the thing is, I scanned the photo, so I can't search on my page. The linguistic view. Let's see.
And you said he was describing what?
He's talking about his initiation, and he's talking about the nature of God, right? And he's saying that, you know, what we tell the people, like the normal people, is not like, it's we give them gibberish because they can only understand, like, this is the elder, the priest talking to the priest talking to him.
Yeah, I think it's on page 562. So I don't know. There's a paragraph here where it says, "My child, God is more in you and more part of you than you are in the part of yourself." Is that Does that sound
Yeah,
familiar?
it's somewhere around there. So if you could continue reading.
Okay. My child, God is more in you and is more part of you than you are part of yourself. He exists in you more than you exist in yourself. You were not created by God, as the aliens tell you, but you exist as part of God. Your soul is immortal because God is immortal. Your soul and mine are as much as part of God as the grain of the sandstone is part of the boulder and part of the mountain. My child, I want you to know, I want you to now look at all the ball of clay. This ball of clay is known as the ball of instruction. It was first used generations ago by the great ones of the mother nation known as the Bantu, from whom we all sprang, to instruct those whose duty was to carry the flaming casket of beliefs to the posterity. This ball has another ball inside of it, and that one has still another smaller ball inside it. There are 7 balls within each one here, where you only see the outer ball. And this, my child, is the ball that symbolizes all our knowledge and our beliefs. That everything under the sun is but part of something greater still. This ball, my son, is the symbol of infinity. You will want to know what God looks like and how he will be interpreted by your eyes and your brains, where you to see him. For my child, other than that, we know he exists for very reason that we ourselves exist. We do not know for sure, and we must never try to know for sure. No man can ever see God and live or understand what he has seen. For God is such that his very essence, his very being, and his very shape will be beyond the interpretation of human eyes and human brain. You can only guess. So I think it's continuing. I think I know
Yeah.
where the part you are looking for, where it said the
It's going to
children.
be, and I just found my note. I don't know what page it is. I cut it off, but it's going to start off with all these carved concepts. So this should be after the wooden, after 563, after the wooden
Okay.
boat.
Yeah, I got it right here. So on 564, it says, all these carved concepts of the form of God are only a means of satisfying the common rabble, which cannot be made to worship any God unless that God has a shape that they can more or less understand and hold in mind. They are also intended to discourage young people from asking too many questions, and you, oh, chosen one, must only bear this in the valleys of your mind, that God is there and the lesser gods are there, but no one can ever know what their forms are. A God must never be interpreted as having a fixed shape. God can assume any shape. he desires in whatever form would suit his purpose best at any given time. There may be times when lesser gods can assume the shapes of animals or trees or even rocks and boulders. But the reason why the lesser gods more often take human forms is because we would understand better when they communicate with us. And then it goes into my instructor proceeded to explain that while these masks and carvings serve their purpose to instruct children and the common people, I, as a chosen one, must know more about our actual concept of God.
Yeah, and it just goes on to repeat. But the point here, as you can read, is that the gods in the carvings and all of this stuff is for just lay persons and children. But when you get into the real teachings of it, he said you must know the deeper. It's just like even Christ in the Bible. You know, he says when he was speaking to the multitude after the whole fishing things, he said, why, one of the apostles was like, why do you speak to them in parables? He said, it's for you to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. To them, you know, I speak parables. And he's speaking to the divine seven. So for those of the like a disciple, those of the discipline, those who have the time and the discipline to study and get all the deep accumulated information, you get all the abstract stuff that's beyond. You get the concepts, you get the scientific concepts. But everyone else, they get the parables, they get the drawings, the little wooden thing, and it did have three heads, you know, the carvings and things.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people may think that that's it, like that's all that there is to the spirituality and the teachings. But when you actually get into these initiated schools, it's not like that. And what I wanted to share along those same lines is from Dr. Sylvester Turner Gates. Y'all familiar with him? Oh, excuse me.
His face, I'm very familiar with his face.
Yeah, and he came up with him and his team came up. He's a theoretical physicist, came out of MIT, and you know, he has the adinkras, and it has to deal with superposition and supersymmetry and all of that. And you know, is a kind of a binary system, and you know, some people interpret his work as we live in a matrix. And then it has, you know, it kind of correlates to these binary codes that you see in like EFI and how our computers work and all that good stuff. But this is, I'm gonna share this one slide. So I had to type it out. It's an actual lecture that you can view of his. And when I was watching the lecture, and he made this statement, I immediately thought of this Credo Mutua quote that y'all just read. And so let me go here so it becomes a little clearer. So can y'all see that clear? Hello?
My bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we can see.
All righty. So the video, the lecture is called the EE Just Symposium Keynote Address, Susie and the Lords of the Rings. And it has to do with superposition. I forgot what that stands for. But anyway, so Dr. Sylvester James Jim Gates Jr. And this is the YouTube link if y'all, you know, want to write it down and type it out. But y'all should be able to find it if it's still up with those keywords. But he states this. He says, this is what we call vertex normalization in quantum theory. And what it basically says is that the charge that an electron couples to a photon with actually depends on things such as the speed and the spin, the location, much more complicated than the equation we taught our students in high school. And I have this bolded. You see, we constantly lie when we teach science, but we lie in the service of truth. Doesn't that sound kind of like what the other gentleman just said, Dr. Tom?
Yes.
So you see, we constantly lie when we teach science, but we lie in the service of truth. We tell people the part of the truth that is appropriate for what they have as a background. It would make no sense for me to walk into a high school classroom and try to teach my students relativistic quantum field theory. So I say instead, Coulomb's law is the end of the story. Even though I know that is not the complete accurate story, but it's good enough for that audience. So when you talk to a scientist, you need to be very careful if you're not a scientist, because you need to know what the scientist is assuming about you, about what you know, because that influences what we will tell you. So the point of me bringing that up is to demonstrate that even in modern science, if you're reading introductory books and you are not a scientist yet, you won't have the real information. What they give you in these introductory texts and things of this nature is what you can handle at that level. Because once the higher up you get, it becomes more abstract. You have to think in terms of numbers, in terms of field equations and up down like just kind of abstract things. So this is why, like, for example, people get pissed at me when I say that energy is not a thing, it's a measurement. And what do you mean energy cannot be created or destroyed and stuff like this? It's a thing, it's a fluid. Like, people argue me to death. I'm like, no, energy is a property of matter. It's an equation. It's no different than temperature or speed. You don't find speed in nature. It's a label we use to describe the rate of change in terms of acceleration or deacceleration when it comes to an object in time and space, right? And then when it comes to energy, its ability to do. So it's like the reason why we have to give people these types of teachings at that type of level, because you have to give them enough that it will satisfy their curiosity, but it won't take you 2 or 3 years to be able to explain it to them, and for which they don't have the time. And so this is why the priesthoods existed in the way that they did, and why you had to memorize all that stuff. That's just foundational stuff, so you can get the abstract stuff later. But saying all of that to say, in terms of what Brother Sean P. Was saying in regards to Unc doesn't have this background when it comes to African cultures and history, because it's the same way that Dr. Sylvester Gates, talked about, we give you what we think that you can handle. That's what Unc is reading, but he don't have the deep understanding. He doesn't know the languages. He can't access what they're really saying in these particular texts. And it's the same thing regardless if it's the quantum mechanics and the physics and all that. You have to be very good at math to understand a lot of what's going on in these places. People think that E equals MC square is the equation. Like, E equals MC square is the summation of like 16 pages worth of equations.
Can I add something, bro?
Go ahead, Falade.
Okay, so I'm actually a mechanical engineer.
Go ahead.
And when you study mechanical engineering, they only teach you Newtonian mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
When you study physics in your third year of physics, they teach you something called Lagrangian mechanics. And basically that only so Newtonian mechanics focuses on forces, mass, acceleration. So that's what most people are taught. Lagrangian mechanics focuses on actions. So considering an object based on time and its movement based on mass, velocity, all of that good stuff. And they found out, and you find out that if you study Lagrangian mechanics, you don't need to consider things like force, mass, acceleration to handle a particular object when you're studying it. So that's just an example. So if I only focused on mechanical engineering, I will only know things about stresses, force, mass, acceleration, and things in relation to that. But you can study. There's more to science, and in relation to African tradition, Brother Asa always talks about how God is the ability to do, and God is the action generating principle. And to me, that correlates straightly with Lagrangian mechanics, which deals with action. So that's already a way we can teach our people. We don't. It's bigger than the Big Bang. Than it. You know. It's. I've also found out that so in my field, I do theoretical mathematics, and I don't do the real going out to make cars or to make engines. And I found that most of the drawings and diagrams that he talks about describes how, when you do theoretical mathematics, you try to describe a system through an equation, and those drawings are systems. And they, if and I keep telling myself that, but if you settle down, you can relate those mathematics to those drawings, and you
Yeah.
can describe a system just as it should. So that's just something I want to throw out there, that if he studies more, he will see more of these connections.
Indeed. All righty. I'm gonna go back to Sakao, and then we're gonna bring in DeJong. Go ahead. You said you had one more question. I
Yeah,
know it's kind of far back. We didn't
I
shift
know.
it, but go ahead.
Before I ask another question, I just wanted to, add a little bit of what I've been discussed so far.
Right.
About what Brother Shampi brought up about Ankh, interpretation of all these African worldview and the universe and all that. One of the things Diop advised is, he told us was, there is no way African will recreate or create new body of sciences if we don't do classical reference, our own classical reference, if we don't go back. Imagine a Europe without Greco-Roman reference. The speaker who was just speaking that you put up, if you listen to him, he began with Greeks, then he went to Victorian period, then he came to modern European knowledge. That's how all European operates. They start with Greek, even if it doesn't make sense. They say Plato said this, but we've moved from that area now, and this is the new information we have. So this is the way they operate, and every knowledge should operate like that. You go to the ancestors, what they said, how they see things. From there, then you pick up the paradigm. Then from there, you begin to develop it. But you don't just say, let's throw everything in the dustbin, let's now start. Where are you starting from? Starting with what? So it's really good for us to always go back to these concept of the universe from our ancestors. From there, it gave us a new understanding. Then we can now develop that theory and see if we can test it. Like Brother Asal said, we can test these concepts to see if they are right or not. You see, we are not saying everything they said was correct, but at least they are scientifically testable. That is very, very interesting. My question here, Brother Asal, tonight, final question is building temple for modern Africans. What is the purpose of building a temple today? Because if I look into ancient Egypt, these temples were schools, they were universities, they were colleges. And but when we talk about temples and shrines today, we are going back to Islam and Christianity, which are the classical model today. So a typical mosque today, when I go there, is to pray. I do rituals, I pray to Allah, and then that's it. I'm gone. In the church, I go there to sing praises, dance, and then praise Jesus and beg him to forgive me, and then I'm out. So today, as an African, let's say I want to build a temple. I'm going back to West Africa, and I have this great vision. I want to build an African temple to revive African spirituality. What do I do in this temple? Do I open a school? Why not build a school if there's a school that I just need? But if I'm to build a temple, what should be the ideal African temple today in terms of helping this African Renaissance process?
That's a university. That's all they were universities. The word we use today is university. And because African people did not have a strong demarcation between things that are spiritual and ethical and the diurnal world, the physical world, and things involved in it, the later researchers, attach religious connotations to everything, and that's just not the primary focus. These were institutions. It's no different than, like how you would see in the martial arts movies, when in Shaolin Temple, and there's a whole bunch of, rows of martial artists training, and then they running up with the water and pouring out the water and doing all these exercises. It's a temple, but it's a school. It is where they learn. They farm there. They, whatever about nature, that's where they learn. It's just an institute. It's a brick and mortar institute. And so again, it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of the conversation. We have to build the institutions and control the education system. That's the crux of the issue here, is that at least in the diaspora, we don't, control the means of education. Like here in the United States, if you want to have a public school, the public school is funded by the tax dollars. And so you may live in a community where it's all types of people, and you can't just, fully just concentrate, just have a strict Afrocentric, curriculum from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, because of the sheer demographics where we're at. And then on top of that, even if we are in places where we are the majority and those tax dollars would go to fund that, the vast majority of the people are the Christians and Muslims. So, having a strong Afrocentric stint, you're going to run into problems because they don't want, their children learning about, Osiris, and, they'll think all this stuff is pagan, and, anything of blackness is devalued in these types of spaces, even amongst us who have been, Christianized and Muslimized in this particular context. So this is why the separate conversation in terms of African sovereignty in economics is important, because if we want to build those, universities where, everyone is required as a freshman to take intro to Africana studies, and then, then they can take their math, their science, their nursing, and all of this other kind of stuff. We have to control the entire educational system so that we won't have to constantly be battling and trying to convince others of why this is important for us. And, or we're going to have to work on the economics and the consciousness in a way that the conscious folks are making a lot of money and can support private institutions that do such work. So, for example, in San Antonio, Texas, there's an organization, the OBU, right? And they have an independent school where they educate from elementary to high school in African-centered curriculum all the way through. They don't take corporate donations. They don't take state, funds or anything to that nature. But the enrollment is very small. And so you can imagine in a place like San Antonio, Texas, where there's not a lot of Black people to begin with, and you're in the very heart of the Bible Belt, where everybody is very conservative, amongst Black folks here. So it's a very small, unit. But if there was a like, let's say we concentrated in an area and you had, a lot of African-centered folks who were making money, and of course having good relations, creating, getting married and having children and being able to send them to schools like that, we can fund them independently so that, they can continue just like other private institutions. But, the reason why they're able to be supported is because of the wealth of the individuals, that they make. So it's not just about religion. It's about, economics. It's about consciousness, and all of these things, all these cylinders have to be going at the same time, and rising at the same time. So it's the concept of the temple, again, my method, demysticize these terms and concepts. So when you're talking about a priest, you're just talking about a professional, a licensed professional in any, police are priests, doctors are priests, nurses are priests. The reason why we can't conceive it in the same way is because we don't run, as John Henry Clark said, one of the things that that slavery has done is erased our memory of how to run a state apparatus. And so when you start thinking sovereign and being able to pool resources together, to collect taxes and what kinds of licenses, because that's what it is. If a priest, a Nganga in Fukiao's part of the Congo, these people deal with medicine. So how would you license these Nganga in a modern time? What about the architects and the architecture? How are you going to regulate the constructing of buildings? Building, cars and satellites and computer networking systems. Those people who deal with those are priests. But even we didn't use the word priest, whatever, like and Brother Sean can attest to this, reading the text, everywhere you see in Nganga, you see the definition, a master and a doer. What is a woe? By God definition, is anything that can work and not be seen. Work is the ability to do, or work is that which is done. It means it comes from a verb meaning to act, to do. So when Fukiao talks about Nganga, we use the word priest. They're just saying a master craftsman, someone who's very knowledgeable of their craft, a doer, someone who just don't talk. Their word you can rely on. They say they're going to do something, it shall be done. And so it's really getting the education on what these concepts means and demysticizing them so that we can utilize them and ground ourselves in them when we are building for eternity like we want to. And that's my 27 cents on that. And so I'm gonna bring in, I know this person has been waiting patiently. Dejan, if you are still there, you can unmute your mic and please introduce yourself.
Good evening, brothers.
Good evening.
So I want to first say thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to speak. This is my first time being on, so
appreciate it. No doubt.
I see that you're an alpha. I'm a sigma, so blue
I
5.
see. All right.
But
no doubt.
So the first question is a basic question about because I'm starting to learn a little bit more about cosmology because I'm kind of a beginner. Who are some good authors, or who should I look up when it comes to trying to understand more about cosmology? You guys were referencing a book earlier, and I was trying to get the name of that book.
Are you talking African cosmology, traditional indigenous African cosmology, or cosmology as a modern field of science?
The African cosmology, and honestly, anything will help. But the African cosmology, the book. What was the book that you guys were reading from?
That was Dr. Kimbwadinde Kia Bonseki Fukiao, or you could just look up Fukiao, F-U-K Fukiao, K-I-A-U.
Okay.
All right, and it's African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo.
Okay.
All righty. Now, keep in mind that, my recommendation is to find works on individual groups in their cosmology. So, for example, Malidoma Some has a book, The Healing. What is Some's book? The Healing Power. Because I always get him and Fukiao.
The Healing Wisdom of Africa.
Yeah, The Healing Wisdom of Africa. Because I always get it confused with Fukiao's Self-Healing Power and Therapy. But that's the book you see right there, The Healing Wisdom of Africa.
Okay.
In there, you're going to get the Daguerre cosmology and what they got to say about that. Okay. So that's another source in terms of cosmology. And it's easy to kind of find Egyptian work, but if you want to start off with Egyptian, get Dr. Theophilo Benga's African Philosophy. It's a blue book. It came out in 2004. I cited from it earlier. Yep. If you see on the screen, Brother Sean P is showing it right there.
Okay.
So it starts off with some excerpts of ancient Egyptian cosmology. And then when you look at the notes and things that Dr. Obenga provides, he'll give some other examples kind of correlating. And so it'll just give you some resource material that you can look up yourself. I mean, and there's plenty.
I've read the Meta Nature by Ra'an.
Leave it alone.
You said leave that alone?
Yeah.
Why you say that?
Because I want to start you off on an accurate footing. You can read that. You can come back to that once you have grounded in the academic work of these different traditions.
Understood.
You get what I'm saying? Understood. So like it is. So now you can look at it for what it is. It's not invaluable, or it does not have value. I don't know how I'm trying to say that, but you already have to have a certain background to be able to distinguish, what he's adding, and to know, because he likes to kind of mix a lot of Indian stuff. He'll call it African, but notice that I'm trying to, at least for this initial stage, I'm trying to avoid giving you books that have a whole bunch of cosmologies and stuff in it.
Right.
For
Yeah.
me, it's best that you take each individual group and study it by itself, so you can do your own comparative work, and then you can, kind of go into some other texts. But I would go see, this is one of my study strategies for Africology and Africana studies. I look for books that are written by individuals who grew up and were initiated into their own indigenous systems, because you get more out of the explanation of their cosmologies and spiritual traditions than you would, not saying that you can't get anything out of in terms of just a strict academic anthropological recording of text.
Right. They have the actual experience, basically.
Because they grew up in the with the language and the rituals and the like. But one text written by a European about an African people that I would highly recommend is two, actually. There's Conversations with Ogo Tameli and The Pale Fox, both written by Marcel Griot. And with The Pale Fox, it was also co-authored by Daerchini. I forgot how you pronounce it. Somebody can correct me. And thank you, Brother Conan Lee, for the super chat. Greatly appreciated. And thank you for your continued support. And yeah, I mean, I can recommend some books. See, and I'm trying to see, like, you can get this book here, Lakota Lee Mbog, by Dr. Mbilek Mendinge out of Cameroon. He's also a Bassa. I've done an interview with him on this program as well, and so you'll get into the Bassa cosmology, the Bassa out of Cameroon, and then there's Muntu Wan Zombie by Dr. Chilemalema Mukinge. I've had him on the show a couple of times. And in full disclosure, I produced this book. And so, but the author is Dr. Chilemalema Mukinge. And so he's of the Baluba people, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And you'll get some cosmology in here, not only of the Baluba, but of other African groups as well. We go on and on. Doctor, if you can find any of the works by Dr. Kipkoech Sambu, Sambu, and he's dealing with the collagen people of East Africa. That's a good text. See, I don't have too much. See, I'm in Texas right now, and I'll be here until March. But all my books are in Philly. But I have some stuff here, but otherwise I'd be like bang, bing, 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 boom. Just stuff at least that I have even in my close library. But there's a lot of works, but those are a good start.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
No doubt. Let me go to the chat and see. And I know I missed a lot of questions. And I'll be wrapping up soon because we're already at 3 hours, 24 minutes. So I'll go for another 10 minutes or so, and I'll just randomly pick a question from here. Let me see. I'm just scrolling all the way back up to see. Let me see. What is this? A lot of Europeans don't know Greeks, Romans, and British Isle Celts worship Africans because Africans had ancient colonies in Southern and Western Europe. I don't know if that would be if they did worship them, that would be the reason per se. Camberline, mind and body. Please do that show ASAP. I don't know what show or what was said. Let me see. Yeah, y'all having your own conversation there. Let me see. I personally find this amazingly confirming because my mom was big on using the sit and think about our mistakes. We always came out of each sitting enlightened and determined. Matter of fact, if you study the Dogon, they have a kind of a community, like most African villages would have this one area or kind of like this one hut where people would gather and discuss issues dealing with the community. And in the Dogon, they have it to where everyone has to sit down. Like you can't stand up in it because it's so short. And the reason why they do that is because, if things get heated, you could injure yourself trying to get up and harm somebody. So, the idea is that, you sit calmly and you work things out, as a community. And so that sitting has, kind of deep implications, in these different societies. Let me see. It's only let me go up so far. Minze Moseko says, indeed, translatability is another challenge, as some African concepts and idioms are deeply symbolic and multidimensional. A basic one is Ubuntu, a concept that includes social and cosmic justice. Indeed. The Netaru are also deeply misunderstood subject that we in Southern Africa and linked to totems as well as other nature spirits. Isitunwa, I guess he's missing the O. Amatongo, Amatagongo. I don't know how you spell that or pronounce that. Thonga and Amadlozi, roughly translated as ancestors. Matter of fact, that phrase Amadlozi, I argue is cognate with the Yoruba word Orisha, and is also cognate with how we say Ak in ancient Egyptian, that term there. Let me go back down. Let me see what's the latest here. And thank you, spiritual doctor, Afimaye Galagaraga. Please forgive me for mispronouncing. I'm trying to sound it out. He says, Alafia, greetings and blessings. My first time here and I'm loving it. Thank you for coming here and for your support as well as your super chat, and hope to have you back. So given what he stated there, I guess I should give a reminder for everyone who hasn't as of yet to That's right. To like and subscribe. Well, like the video, and if you haven't, subscribed to the channel. And so that, when we have these conversations, that you'll know a little bit earlier, and you can join the conversations and peep the interviews and things of that nature. So Wyclef Waweru states, Hotep, watching the show from Nairobi, Kenya. Peace and blessings. Thank you for joining. And we kind of have an international audience today. So people in the UK, all the way to South Africa, and Kenya is in the building. I think our good brother Sakao is in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, our good brother Chavez from the planet of H-Town in Houston. And speaking of Houston, again, January the 8th and 9th, the film Hoppy, the documentary film Hoppy, will be shown. And on that Saturday, January the 8th, we're going to have two important speakers. That is Dr. Wade Nobles, whose lecture is titled Sikh, The Restoration of Cultural Consciousness. And then Professor James Small, and his lecture is titled The Restoration of African Sacred Sciences. And so this will be at the Shrine of the Black Madonna off of MLK Street at 1 p.m. And again, it's a 2-day event. So on the second day, at the same location at the Shrine of the Black Madonna, they will be showing the actual film Hoppy. And I was a part of that film. And as being part of that film, I will be on the panel discussion after the film. And on that panel will be Dr. Wade Nobles, Professor James Smalls, and Dr. Vera Nobles, who is the wife of Dr. Wade Nobles, and of course, our good brother Taki Grant, who is the creator of the Hoppy film. So for those of you in Texas, not just in the Houston area, if you ain't in Houston, drive. Get your tickets at hoppyfilm.com and enjoy yourself. It's going to be a very powerful weekend. So that's going to be like in 2 weeks, I believe. So I'll look for, one more if anybody got a question. I don't see a question. Let me see. And thanks to Sister Tamika for again her support and having everyone to big up and save and like the video. And I guess that is it for now. I'll have to recheck the chat, when I review this this video. But thank you to every one of you who are watching live, and then of course those of you who are catching the archive. Thanks to each one of our guests for your questions and for your insights and your commentary. I'm greatly appreciative, of your presence, and so can't wait to do it again. I love these community conversations. And so, what I will do, I'm not sure if any of y'all have, websites or, your social media, but how can people link up with you in this social media space? I'm going to start off with Muhammad, and then Falade, then Dejan, and then end with Brother Sean P. So go ahead.
Yeah, hi, brother. For everyone, I don't have any. Just really quick, I don't have any social media. Actually, I hate that. I hate social media in general. I just I like to communicate and meet with people, face to face. But I think I have given you my email before. Remember when we were talking? I'm still as I told you before, I'm still, like learning. I'm trying to absorb as many information, but I
Yeah, I
definitely.
think I sent you an email. I didn't get a response back, so I'm not sure if you got it. But
No, I didn't get it. I didn't get any response from you.
All righty, I'll try to resend again. So I'm gonna send it tonight. Well, it's tonight over here. It's probably morning or afternoon where you're at.
Yeah, please. So I can. So Professor Asar,
Yeah.
so I can, I can hit you up because I'm still very ambitious in trying to widen my scope so I can engage in not only linguistics but also in translating, because my Arabic is my mother tongue, the language that I have been abroad into.
Yes.
So I want to have, if we can have, some discussions about Timbuktu, the text of Timbuktu. If I can, if I can add any, add any something of value in that respect, and other stuff as well. And yeah, like I said, Miska grow to all of you. Afia logo. That's have a good night in Nubian as well. And I really love the community. I really love the brothers here have really beautiful insight, and I definitely look forward to engage and interact. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Brother Faladay.
I don't really have any personal website. Haven't been on social media in a while because of work. But yeah, my full name is Joseph Faladay, and if anyone is curious, I'm an engineer, and you can find my works on me. If you go to the website like International Mechanical Engineering Congress and Exposition, you see some of my work. I do things related to population dynamics. So yeah, do work with Midwestern State University. But yeah, not really, just on the move. So I don't really have a website yet, but I'm working on something. But yeah, that's all I got. Yeah.
Indeed. Please send me an email. It's at the bottom here at info@asarimhotep.com. Because I want to bring you on and especially interview you for I just started the channel, but the concept has been existing for a number of years. And so some colleagues and I created Black Science Month, which is October. We celebrate in October Blacks and Africans in science. And so I would love to, just interview you concerning your journey and what you do. And, hopefully you can inspire some younger people to get into the mechanics and things. And you can kind of outline that for them and give them some source materials
Most
along those
definitely.
lines.
Most definitely.
So please send me an email at that email address, info@asarimhotep.com,
Gotcha.
and we could set up something.
All right,
All
cool.
right.
Yeah.
Indeed. All righty. And Dejan?
Yeah, if people want to follow me on Instagram, they can go to DejanDivine.x. That's my Instagram name, DejanDivine.x. And I want to say thank you. I would love to come back, and I have a lot of questions. I got to the live late, so but I have a lot of questions. So I'll be looking forward to coming back on and just asking questions and just learning. So thank you so much.
Appreciate you coming, and we're glad to have you, and you're always welcome back.
Appreciate it.
All righty. And Brother Sean P. in the building, who also is the author of this text here, what SARS-CoV-2 taught me and he is of the Mosi warrior clan. And this is our brother, Annie Harris, Sean P. So y'all can definitely go to, what's the website? And, I'll go send them.
It's in the chat. Same tree, different branch publishing. To get your copy of what SARS-CoV-2 taught me. Also, you can check us out at the Mosi Warrior Clan YouTube channel and Kofi Pi Research Team YouTube channels. Both links are in the actual chat. And for anyone that want to pick up on the conversation of Unc versus Unc, or this whole thing about it, you have to go back to the 11th, I believe, where I initially did just pretty much a conversation on the topic of the first fire, which would be the literary meaning of what some would project out in the Bantu Congo teachings as the Big Bang. So they call it the first fire. So I stick to that mapping of the cosmos and deal within the first few pages of that framework, and then get into some science and let the scientists speak. I also refer to Neil deGrasse Tyson, Krauss, and even to Ka Kilimanjaro's African Times, to even get into some of the order of the universe and things of that nature, because in chapter 1 of African Times, I don't know about the revised edition, but the first edition, he talks about how things come into order. So, like I said, all the links are in the chat. I appreciate your for always having us on. I appreciate you for always teaching and being the example. And thank you for doing another show.
Indeed. And again, thank you all for watching. And I know it's late and everyone has to go to work on Monday and deal with them bosses. Unless you're a boss, then you got to deal with them customers. But either way it goes, we living, so continue to live and thrive, and take this information and expand with it, and that's the purpose. So until next time, y'all enjoy the rest of your night. Y'all have a blessed evening. Peace.